call to order the regular city council meeting for November 25th, 2019. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Lisa, let the roll call show everyone is present this evening. And we'll move on to the approval of minutes from November 11th, 2019.
I just have one quick correction here.
Councilmember Kibble, go ahead.
The vote for Mayor Pro Tem, if you could add Mr. Kennedy and, okay. Oh, I didn't see that on the desk. Okay, all right, thank you. That's all I had.
Anyone else have anything for the minutes?
I'll move the minutes.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. On to the approval of the bills this evening.
No bills.
No bills?
Second meeting.
Thank you. Approval of tonight's agenda. Paul, we had a phone call from Slara before the meeting. Could you brief us on that?
Yes, they've requested that the item number 1 under new business regarding the athletic field and court use application and permit policy and procedures be taken off tonight's agenda. We will be bringing it back as soon as they advise us.
Okay, great. I'll entertain a motion for that.
Move the agenda as amended.
I'll support.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Tonight's consent agenda has a Cultural Arts Commission resignation, Cultural Arts Commission appointment, and a Cable Commission appointment.
I'll move the consent agenda.
I'll support.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. At this time, we will open the floor for public comment. Please remember to state your name and address. All right, we'll close public comment. And we'll move on to the discussion of downtown this evening with Mr. Donahue.
All right. I know we've got another item on the agenda, so I'll go through this fairly quick. December 6th, we are having a media event at 10 a.m. We're going to start off at the Corner Cafe. It'll be their first official day open for business as the wine bar. So we're going to kick that off at 10 a.m., and then we're going to be celebrating the building rehabs and the full Victorian paint schemes downtown. So, exciting day. Get some good coverage. November 30th, Small Business Saturday. We started getting more PR out last week and continuing to get information into the businesses. Again, people can register to win $5,000. So if they go into the participating businesses, and they can see how to qualify for the $5,000 potential prize. Still getting a lot of activity for the next round of building rehabs for next spring. One of those buildings is going to be showcased. I forget the address, but the architect has been hired. They're coming in with their building plans. It's the State Farm Insurance Building next to Lake Street Tavern. And so they're going to be going with facade, cornice to match the other buildings. So they've hired their architect, and they'll be in for their permits soon. The November 21st Business and Property Owners meeting, we had a good discussion talking about holiday events. Councilman Dilg was there, so that was a good meeting. An item that will be gaining traction as far as discussion and potential action is that the owner of 135 East Lake, the former RCA Stone Building, as we call it, now owned by Dan Schwegler, contacted the city, and we'll be working, Paul and I, with our city attorney on his request for commercial tax abatement. Going back to late 2016 and 2017, we had two projects that we talked about as potential use for that. And so we put quite a bit of research into it. I know we have new council members, so the research that was put together we'll share with our city attorney and Paul. We've talked about it. Pick it up kind of where we were in early 2017 to see what council's feelings are. It's an accelerated plan for, while the two different laws allow for 10 to 12 years, I think as we left it, we were going to take a very conservative approach, if anything. And there's a threshold requirement and then steps along the way. Anywhere from $500,000 or $1 million as a threshold up to $10 million projects. Still never maxing out as a conservative approach, if council were to enact anything like that. So we'll be getting into that. Again, refreshing the members of council that were there, and then information for the council members that were not here in 2017. And that's all I have.
Does anyone have anything for Mr. Donahue tonight? Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Oh, yes.
Bob, I just want to tell you that I had the best time at Ladies' Night, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful event. I think people that came to the event were ecstatic that the business owners were actually there, so they got to meet a lot of the people that actually own the businesses. So if you could just take that back,
Sure.
To the DDA, that would be great. And I have to tell you, Salon 104, no doubt that fireplace was a hit. I knew it would be the first time I walked in there. Kelly just did a great job. And I think that I heard a lot of comments about people really saw the creativity that the business owners were putting into their businesses, didn't realize they were as exciting to be in. Kelly's clearly was one because of the fireplace. Venue was great, the way she had the jeans hanging on the wall, coral sash, grand trunk. People out, and I'll tell you what else was a big hit was Deborah and Dave down at the Lyon Theater, because people had an opportunity to actually meet them, talk to them, find out scheduling. So I thought that this was not only a great evening for the women, but I thought it was just a fabulous PR. You did a great job. Streets were packed. I have to go back sometime, like in an afternoon, to shop because I couldn't get it. Was just packed. It was crowded. So it was a very, very successful event. So congratulations to you and to everyone in the DDA. I just love
It was a great team event for the DDA, and it was a great night.
I just love the DDA. They're just on fire. They really are. They're just doing a great job. So.
Can I follow on that?
Oh, yeah, certainly.
I did want to mention that too. The other thing that I wanted to mention, I agree with everything that was said. It was fantastic. I also liked, and it might have happened before, but we were not aware of it, but we liked being able to go down to even all as far as the bike shop, and it was
Right.
really great to, they were really having fun with the ladies coming in, and they had a bike wheel to spin, and they had witch's hat, beer there, and it was really fun. So the only thing that was bad is that there was so much to do. I didn't get to all the stores this time, and then the restaurants were just booming. We were in Lake Street Tavern, and it was just packed with people, and so it was just a really great night. I agree. It was really
You
wonderful.
bring up a quick point, is that the disconnect because of our, the uses that we have south of Lake Street. That's why we have an excellent master plan, and so the sooner we get parts of our master plan south of Lake Street adopted, we'll fill those gaps so that the businesses, it's hard for the bike shop to be distanced from those events. But we still try to include them.
I was even thinking if it was nicer out, it would have been like you could have little booths there or something to get people to keep, moving it down.
When we talk about Cool Yule later, that's why we're trying to get the south end businesses connected to downtown.
Yep, that's great.
All right, thanks, Bob. Move on to the fire chief report. Chief Vogel.
Good evening. Just a couple quick things. I spoke to the manufacturer who built the ladder truck, and the good news is I think we'll have it back in time for Cool Yule. The bad news, we've lost 3 firefighters this week that retired. 2 got hired by full-time, and 1 had family issues. So we have really kicked in a hiring campaign. We've printed posters for the schools. We made some additional posters that we're going to put around town. We did a cable TV thing. We are really pushing for hiring. We are pretty low right now. It's got me concerned. Also, we got bad news that the manufacturer that makes our self-contained breathing apparatus will no longer be supporting them. They're not going to make them anymore. They are 10 years old. I had a meeting with Lyon Township. We are going to try to move forward with that grant. It's going to be pretty important that we get that grant written. We're going to even consider maybe even hiring a grant writer, just because it's such a great amount of money, and we feel it's pretty important. If we get it, it would only cost us 5%. The federal government would cover 95%. Two last things is 4 weeks ago, you all know that I left here and hit a deer, and we were able to fix the car without any cost to the city. We were pretty fortunate. I had a mechanic friend that we were able to put it back together. We did have to have the fire department come out when it caught on fire, and we were able to get it out. So I thanked Lyon Township for coming out and helping me in Green Oak Township. And then lastly, some really good news. I just learned we got approved for a grant from the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority, our insurance. They're going to pay for our active shooter kits. So I will be preparing that agenda from 2 weeks from now. I'm going to work with Paul to make sure that we get the wording right. We have most of the trauma kits. This is going to give us some vests. You were at the training. You saw how that works. So I think it kind of came important to me to realize maybe we could put my people in some safe gear also. So I worked with Chief Sovic, and I got the grit approved. And we just found out about an hour ago. So that was pretty exciting. So,
Congratulations.
yep, thank you.
Great. Does anyone have anything for Chief Vogel tonight?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Good job, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the police chief report with Chief Sovic.
Yeah, back in May when we tried to, I came with you guys to get approval to spend approximately $4,800 for some new shotguns and accessories. At the time, I was hopeful that we were able to make an even exchange or a swap with some of our old weapons, and after going through our property room with guns that have been there for longer than I've been there, Sergeant Baker was able to go through those, and it's not going to be a complete swap, but we're going to be short about $130. So Sergeant Baker did a great job wheeling and dealing with the company Kiesler's out of Indiana. So instead of spending the $4,800, we can save all that and spend about $130. I should have the final number sometime this week. We've been working with a new IT company. We're kind of in transition from IT right from Visicom, and I'm just waiting on some documentation from IT right in order to move forward with the purchase of the in-car cameras, because we wanted to wait until our new IT company was in. They're very familiar with the WatchGuard system, and so in order to make that transition a little bit easier, it was going to be easier for us just to wait until the new IT company came in. So we're working with them, and as soon as we do purchase the in-car cameras, then I will apply to MMRMA for some grants for a little bit of reimbursement for each camera that we did purchase. So that's where we're at with that.
Councilmember Kibble, go ahead.
Do you have a sense of what the turnaround once you order the gear would be?
I would think it's not going to take longer than a month or two until everything's ready to roll. Our install company out of Troy, Synergy Wireless, is very familiar with WatchGuard.
That's great.
So it shouldn't be very, they're just waiting for our business.
Councilmember Richards?
Hi, thank you. I'd just like to know how the new cars are working out that you got.
The new cars are working out great. I mean, the first 2 sedans that we had were the first-year models, and we put a lot of money into them. But the SUVs that we have right now are not first-year or second-year models, so it's been they've been working out with very low maintenance costs, the SUVs. A lot more room, a lot more comfortable, and a lot less maintenance on them.
Okay, just a summation, I just,
Sure.
thank you.
Anyone else have anything for Chief tonight? Thanks, Chief. At this time, we're going to welcome our friends from HRC. Capital Improvement Plan Water Treatment Plant presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having us here this evening. My name is Jesse Vandekreek, Vice President and Principal with Hubble, Roth & Clark, headquartered in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. This evening, I have here with me, to my left, Mr. Roland Alex, my fellow partner and principal at HRC. To my right, I have Noah Bednar, who's one of our very sharp graduate engineers who's cutting his teeth on this water treatment plant here with you guys. Who's not here but listed tonight, of course, is Mike Darga, our associate, who you're all familiar with. Mike has done a lot in the community with regard to infrastructure in the last several years, and Mike's just not with us here this evening. Tonight, we're going to go over a few things. The agenda's listed there. We're going to talk a little bit about the site history. We're going to go over the primary objectives of the CIP listed there. We'll talk about our recommendations, and then we'll have an opportunity to go through some Q&A. I'm sure everybody has a lot of questions. I saw in the packet, it looks like everybody's received a copy of the final report. The presentation is going to be much more general, whereas obviously the devil's always in the details. So we can get into the technical elements of this report, should you so wish. Okay, a little bit of site history. The original plant here in South Lyon was actually, I should say, filtration plant, was actually constructed in 1965. It's an old plant. It didn't look like what it did today when it was first constructed. In fact, if you look at the screen, I'd like to point out the map here. The first plant was just really these couple little cells right here. You had these two horizontal pressure filters and a very small facility. Over the years, as the population increased and as the community demanded a high-quality service supply, the plant was expanded. Initially, there were these two short filters, and in this place, there were two short filters, too. So you started out with four very small horizontal pressure filters, essentially designed to remove iron and manganese from your water. You have very hard water here in South Lyon. Comes out of the ground at about 4 parts per million, and with our current treatment technology, we can actually get that down to around 0.1. It's almost non-detect. So it's been a really great treatment facility with the proper expansions. So again, last major expansion, though, was in 2001. Hubble, Roth & Clark actually designed that. I was a young project engineer on that job, and literally spent every day on that site watching the work get done. I'm very familiar with the plant itself. One of the things that isn't shown there as a date, though, is that I want to bring up is that the actual ground storage tank right here and the elevated storage tank that's at Mill Street was constructed in 1980. I don't know if anybody knew that. 1980. Probably should have had that up here as a bullet item. In 1980, the city of South Lyon was just over 5,000 people. Something like that. Just over 5,000. I don't think it was quite 6,000 yet. We're over 12,000 people now. Keep that in mind.
What was the cost of those at that time? I bet they
Don't
were a
have
lot
those
more
on me.
attractive than they are now.
We could dig through some city records and probably find that 1980 construction cost for you. Okay, bigger picture here for those at home as well. On the right-hand side, what you see are the corporate limits of the city. The green line are the actual corporate limits. The red line here is actually what's called our 10-year wellhead capture zone. So what happens in the city of South Lyon is all the groundwater that we're pulling to treat from our 5 wells come from a leaky, unconfined aquifer, is what it's defined as. And essentially what it is, this groundwater is in the upper Huron River headwaters. And it basically all drains underground very, very slowly all the way towards Ann Arbor. It eventually surfaces at Ford Lake. That's our aquifer. It's the Huron River watershed.
okay? That's important. So the groundwater is heading southwest all the time. And the rate at which this moves at, the transmissivity, is 1 times 10 to the negative 25th. I mean, you can watch flowers grow faster than this water moves. It takes 10 years to pump a drop of water from underground from any place you see on that red line to our wells that are right here in McCaddy Park, which is defined by the yellow limit. Just give you an idea of how where your water source is coming from. What we have in the main photograph here is an aerial view of your water treatment plant. You got Dorothy Street to the south. Of course, you got Pontiac Trail or Lafayette to the east. On the site, you can see the main treatment plant now as it looks today from an aerial view. You got the 2 little small horizontal pressure filters still, and the 4 large ones that we put in 2001. Also expanded this low service wet well and put in a backwash surge tank in 2001. But some of the reasons we're here today, you can even see the condition of it a little bit. Your 1 million gallon ground storage tank is right here on site behind the plant. And your 1 million gallon elevated tank is, of course, up Mill Street. Another thing we wanted to show you, there's a lot of text on here because you got 5 wells, again. And with formerly DEQ, the numbering got a little bit unsophisticated. So I want to explain to you these. The original wells for the plant were 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you can see 1, 2, 3, and 4 right here. HRC designed well number 5 about the time the expansion was done here to facilitate the increase in capacity up to 2.45 MGD. And for those of you that are familiar with the Witch's Hat, the depot, and the historic park, that well station is the one that looks just like the Witch's Hat right next to it. All the other ones look like cinder block brick buildings. Okay, so the reason we did that, of course, was to make it architecturally significant to the site we were putting it in. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wells. We've had some well failures over the years, and that's why you got up here, wells 3 and 4. The first one that failed years back was well number 3. Well number 3, as an emergency measure, rather than build a new building, if you go out there, you'll see it. The DEQ at the time, it was DEQ, would not let us just call that well 3 or 3A. They actually made us call that well 6, which gives you the impression that there are 6 wells. There are not. Well 6 took the place of well 3. Well 4 was just found to be decreasing in capacity to the point where it was no longer serviceable. So that same process under essentially an emergency process, the city contracted directly with Peerless Midwest to go out there and restore that well capacity. And to do that, Eagle now allowed, again, for the well to be placed right outside of well number 4, and let us call it 4A.
4A.
Makes it a lot more straightforward. So just want to make sure everybody knows that. We only have 5 wells in the city of South Lyon. What we show on here are what the designated capacity was and what the current rated capacity of each one. So if we go through those real quick, you'll see that one was originally designed to be 1,000 GPM. After current operations, cleaning, improvements, we're actually getting 1,320 out of there. Well number 2 is problematic. It was designed, originally it only provided just under 1,000 GPM. Currently, it's only providing 281 GPM. My understanding from the reports is that Peerless Midwest televised that well and found that the screen had failed. The casing has failed. It's a gravel pack well, and essentially we can't produce that much out of it anymore. Wells 3, 1,200 GPM designed, currently abandoned, of course, because we put in a 1,200 GPM well and it's producing 1,202. It should. Same way with 4A. Originally it was 1,400, it failed. Now we have designed a current well that matches the original design. So the only one that we're struggling with here is well number 2. Well number 2 is a little short on production. A lot short on production. So let's get into the actual CIP itself. One of the drivers you may recall that we brought to you a while back was showing you the condition of this existing ground storage tank. The existing ground storage tank needs work. It's deteriorating, and we'll get to that. But in order for us to build the new ground storage tank, we need to have temporary water storage. And we also need to have additional storage. Remember that comment I made about this thing being built in 1980 for about 5,000 to 6,000 people? Well, that was fine back then for peak demand and fire flow. But today, with over 12,000 people, with our peak demand and our fire flow, well, with peak demand, we actually nip below our low service set point. You guys saw those graphs. Those are in the very opening. I wanted to graphically show you what happens on your average hot day in the middle of summer. Everybody's using their irrigation systems and filling their pools. We actually go below a level we're comfortable with. I showed you a third graph in there that showed what happened when the South Lyon hotel burned. That started in the middle of the night. If you were to put that on our peak draw demand period in the morning, in the summertime, when it's hot, we'd have been in trouble. You line those two up. So that's really why we're here. And the technicalities in there, how we come up with an additional 600,000. When you take into account fire flow, 3 hours, 2,500 gallons per minute per hour, and then add that on to 10 state standards for storage, you come up with just over 2 million gallons of storage that should be here. Although it's not mandated that you have fire flow storage, but I wouldn't recommend going through beyond that low pressure point. You do that, and then we have negative pressure, boil water, all kinds of problems that this community does not want. So that's really why we're here today. We kept seeing this line get really close, and the operator let us know. We were watching the trend, and we said, yeah, you should really look at building an additional tank. So we went through the methodology to size that tank. It's about 600,000 gallons. We looked at the locations for it. One location that's shown here on the map, and really what the current pricing structure is estimated at, is locating that immediately west of the existing tank in a underutilized parking lot that's contiguous and part of the plant facility itself. What that tank does, of course, again, it provides the fire protection, the high demand period, and it allows us to repair the existing 1 million gallon storage tank during off-peak time in the fall, winter, when your water use is down. As far as the location of this plant, or the tank, we looked at some other locations. It's not really a good idea to put it in the park. We don't really want to get on the other side of the Yerkes Drain. It'd be good to stay on this side. We do know that the city owns property on the south side of Dorothy Street, so we did look at that. So just a few pros and cons. The pros of keeping it on the site, number one, is that you keep all of your process components really contiguous. That's good for operation, efficiency, operating valves between the two structures, really keeping all of your process and your storage on one site. That's pretty beneficial. Security and safety. This is already fenced off with some slight modifications. We can bring this right into our existing fencing and can be monitored. I know that there's been discussions about cameras and other security that came out of looking at vulnerability assessments that are going to be done at this plant. If we were to impose any of that, this would all be covered under the security of this site. And another pro is keeping it here is really minimizing the amount of infrastructure that needs to go to put it in. Basically, our high service, our feed to this tank goes in right here, and then our pumping out of it goes to the 16-inch line right here. Ideally, we would tap right into both of those lines, feed, discharge. So essentially, it's a very tight space to work in, but a very workable space to get this done and have little piping, little excavation. Should we take that to the other side of the road, we're going to have a very increased mechanical cost to get the piping, the controls, and we have some permitting issues actually to deal with. Part of the reason we're struggling with 2A here, this is well house 2A, we like to just pop another one right outside of here like that they let us do with 3 and 4. We already broached that with the Eagle. They said no. You know why? There's a 15-inch sanitary sewer that runs right down Dorothy Street. So So here we are again. They don't like running your finished water immediately adjacent to or under the sanitary sewers.
That makes sense.
Yeah. We struggled with it when we built well number 5. They didn't want to let us do this. Well number 5, they said, nope, you're within 200 feet of the sanitary sewer. We had to do a hydrogeoanalysis to show that with this unconfined leaky aquifer, there's so much water down there, the drawdown effect, the cone of depression, didn't even come close to the street. It was right next to the plant. It was almost vertical. When you get an area that doesn't have much groundwater, that cone of depression can go out several hundred feet. And that's what they were concerned about. Now, we start to put this tank on the other side and dealing with going back and forth over this sanitary line. Again, I'm not even sure if it's permittable. So right now, what we recommend is, if we proceed with this location, is proceeding with our geotechnical evaluation in this vicinity to determine that the soils are suitable to support a 600,000-gallon tank. Given that we have a 1-million-gallon tank here, we don't see any reason why we would. And the soils seem to be contiguous and compatible. But regardless, geotechnical reports, first thing we need to do to make sure we can support it.
Josie?
Yes, sir.
You took the core samples in that parking lot, right? Do we have the results back on those yet?
That parking lot is alligator beyond belief. Have you been on that parking lot?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's junk.
No, I know that. I mean,
Yeah.
but I know that you've made you've taken some of the core samples. I'm just wondering what the results show. I mean, how stable is the ground that's there as far as supporting this, or is there going to be a lot of excavation where you got to haul, peat or whatever else out of there to make it stable?
Very good question. Again, and quite frankly, a core that we could do by hand isn't going to give us that result. What we need to do and what we will do.
I wasn't sure how far you went down. I understand that they said you guys were out there taking those samples.
What we will do is work, I was just talking with the city manager about this before. If you guys were to authorize us to proceed, what we do on your behalf is we go out and issue an RFP to a minimum of 3 geotechnical subconsultants. We give them all the parameters of what it is we're going to be designing and building there. And the geotechnical engineers, whose area of expertise is, comes back and tells us, okay, and we'll talk with our structural department to make sure that they're in the ballpark. But generally, they'll say, well, for this, you want to go, 8 feet down, 10 feet down, 12 feet down. Because this isn't going to be, shouldn't be on piles anyway, unless we find that there's no bottom, there's organics there, then they keep going. But I would suspect that this is going to be a ring foundation that's basically going to be distributed laterally, almost like a spread footing, if you will. So it shouldn't be really deep anyway, as long as we have good bearing capacity. 3,500 PSI bearing capacity, we're all set. But if you go out there, you're right. It's all alligator. It's black marl because the groundwater has been seeping in there for years. The surface, horrible. 8 feet down, probably hard as a rock. But we're going to validate that before we make any decisions at all. We have to, so we can design the foundation properly. Or look at another location. But again, keep in mind, with what's there, should be pretty good. I'd be concerned if there was a big water course going through here, the little Yerkes drain that passes behind it. I'm not concerned about that. That answer your question?
Yep, thanks.
Okay, so we're going to move from the ground storage tank to the horizontal pressure filters. Again, we put 4 of these large guys in 2001. This is what they look like today. That's a picture of the exterior. And again, sometimes looks are worse than things appear. It looks terrible. We were concerned about the thickness, so we actually performed a ultrasonic thickness test around the tank on the welds, and the structural integrity of the tank's just fine. I think what we're seeing is an improperly placed coating that's peeling off, or I think there was some volunteer work at one point that the city took advantage of and had some trustee folks, maybe from the sheriff's office, paint those things. And you can see what happens when you put on latex or improper coating. Hey, but it might have protected our welds. I'm not saying that it didn't do something for us. It's just that's what you get. It doesn't look good. But so the structural integrity of these vessels appears to be just fine. Even the old 2 tanks still appear to be just fine. But what really needs to be replaced is the internals. Really just the media, primarily, the media. The media is bad. Back in 2001, when I got called in, to look at what was going wrong with your plant, I actually was able to calculate right away that you guys were stressing it too much. The filter media hadn't been changed in about 20 years, and we had pink water all over the city. Councilman Kibble, you may recall that. There was red water. We had a lot of red water. We had whites that were coming into the superintendent's office that were pink. We had fixtures that had been white always on city water supply that had big pink stains all around them. So we were not getting all the iron out. So the filter media needed to be replaced. That was about 20 years ago, right? So here we are, about 20 years. We haven't had pink water. You know why? Because when we put the 4 big guys in, we use modern technology. I wish I could slice this in half and show it to you. There's actually a trough in 4 of those, and there's an air blower system inside the tank. So every time we backwash those, we backwash them with water and air simultaneously, and it takes all that media, roughs it up, strips as much of the iron and manganese off it so it can be flushed, and then the media settles back down based on its gradation. In other words, there's larger gravel at the bottom, smaller, smaller, smaller as you work your way up. So I think we've been able to get 20 years out of these because we did put in this simultaneous air-water backwash system, because your raw water hasn't changed at all. It's still as hard as can be. So I would full well expect pink laundry and pink fixtures here had we not put in these simultaneous air and water backwash systems in those 4 units 20 years ago. So, but problem is, the media is still spent. It's reached its capacity. And we went through the laboratory analysis. We hired Tonka Equipment Company, not the one that makes the little trucks that you get for your kids for Christmas. The Tonka Filter, they're a national firm. They came in, they actually entered these vessels, took the manway off, removed the media in cores throughout, had sieve analysis done of all those, and essentially what they're looking at is granularity, distribution, see if those particles are round instead of angular anymore, and sure enough, just as we suspected, it's right at the end of their useful life. So if we don't do something, we may start getting pink water. But I do think that belt and suspenders we did back then got us another 20 years without this time having anything red. Nevertheless, the media has used its useful life. It surpassed its useful life, and it really needs to be removed. So the recommendation here is to replace the filter media in all 6 of the horizontal pressure filters, and also to strip these down and put a new 3-part epoxy coating system on them so that 20 years from now when you're replacing the media again, the vessel's still sound. It won't start looking like the ground storage tank. Okay?
Interesting. The media that's in there, are you going to put the same media back in, or they have something new that they've developed in the past 20 years? Same type of media. I mean, obviously not the same media, but...
Well, that's a great question. What's in there right now is a perfectly suitable media to go back in there. However, we have had some communities that have had taste and odor problems that have switched that media over to granular activated carbon. So it'd be like a carbon filter instead. We're not out of the woods on that one yet. You realize that we can't do anything here without getting permission from Eagle, formerly DEQ. So should you guys authorize the proceed of the design of these elements, the first thing we would do is sit down and have a kickoff meeting with the city's leadership, run this by them, get Eagle's first blanch, get on with design, have them involved at 30, 50, 90. We have to get a permit from them anyway. If at any time in this process they come back and they say, we're concerned about contaminants in your groundwater supply in the future, we think you should go with a different media, then we would come back to you and have that discussion. But right now, there's nothing that's driving a change in the media that's there. Does that answer your question? But I would say that granular activated carbon is a likely change out that would address some things that you don't really have problems with right now. But if you do, you'd have to do that. And the difference with that is instead of 20 years, you got to replace it more frequently, like every 5.
You got to factor in what that does to the cost?
The initial installation would be similar.
Okay.
But the problem is you got to do it every 5 years. You got to change that media out. Granular activated carbon needs to be recharged. You can buy used granular activated carbon for cheaper, and I've had communities try that too. with success, recharged granular GAC, they call it, or you can buy brand new GAC. But again, if we went that route, you'd have to change it every 5 years. I would come back to you if Eagle said that's something they wanted us to do, is change out the filter media. But right now, what's in your budget is putting basically the anthracite that's in there now, not GAC, not activated carbon.
Okay, thanks.
They had made mention on a number of the units, the air infiltration wasn't working any longer. Is that just a simple valve kind of concern, or how is that going to end up being rectified?
They put a budget in there for some of the internals that do, and that's pretty common after this long, but it's relatively minor. So yeah, we will restore the blower operation, make sure that all the nozzles are actually getting air. The bottom line to that, though, was that those were not contributing to premature media failure. To give you an example, with the two old ones, there used to be 4 without any simultaneous air water backwash. When we did that inspection that time in probably 99 or 2000, the inside of those tanks looked like a coral reef. Because what they do is they bind that media without having that simultaneous air and water. The heavy metals take the media and literally bind it together, and it creates what they call path of least resistance, rat holes. We looked in there and it literally looked like coral. You could see where the water was finding the path of least resistance, and it essentially hardened up everywhere. So in this case, a few minor additions, or not even additions, but just minor nozzle replacements, and make sure the valves, all pneumatic in there, is all operating. I think you'll be in great shape. They've served you well.
I mean, there was no mention of how long they had anticipated that had been failing, but it seems like if that was such an instrumental thing in preserving the media, that, a couple of them sounded as though the media was in really good shape. So, and one of them, at least I remember saying that the air aspect of that hadn't been functioning properly, and it was still good media. So
this would be stripped down, replaced, restored. Yeah. If you walked through there, you saw those filter control valves. They're all the clear air lines coming from the blower. Yeah, all single, part and parcel to the horizontal pressure filter project. Okay, if there are no again, plenty of time for questions. Moving on, feel free to interrupt if you'd like. Moving forward, the third out of the fourth item is the induced draft aerators. These are the units that are really hidden by that stainless steel feature. As you're heading up Dorothy, looking towards the west, you'll see what looks like stainless steel louvers on the end of that plant. You can kind of see them in the background there. See that little sliver right here? And what's inside of those are 3 of these big units. You can see that one's in rough shape. And it's in rough shape, quite frankly, because to save budget in the 91 project, you needed more capacity anyway. And we had to add on to that low service wet well. We put in a larger induced draft aerator and just abandoned one in place. So this is the one that was abandoned in place. And again, your uses continue to go up. Everything's continued to go up. This is really our first line of defense. The induced draft aerators are where the water goes first once they're pumped from all your wells. They all go up through these induced draft aerators, enter the top. There's a blower at the top that helps dissipate all the water through what they call coke plates, which are at varying elevations vertically with circular holes for penetration. And as that water passively, once it's been spread apart in molecular form, it passively regenerates and falls through. We're converting that from a ferrous to a ferric state so you can actually strip it out in the filters. So these are critical components. And again, this guy, it's just time. Your water use has gone up. It's time. We need another one in there. It's one of the smaller ones, and it's, I think, one of the smaller budget items too. But we worked very closely with the manufacturer, as noted there. We had a local mechanical contractor who actually worked on the 2001 project, the mechanical sub, agreed to come out, look at it, give us a complete breakdown in price, not only the equipment, but the labor, the crane, everything it would take to remove this and bring it back online. Again, the other induced draft aerators, they don't require immediate assistance. They're in better shape, newer, operating. But again, annual or biannual inspections are recommended on those moving forward. And that came from the manufacturer. You know, you just got to tear these things down and look at those coke plates, clean them all off, order new internals if you need them. So that's recommended as well. But right now, what's on the CIP is quite frankly just to remove and replace the smallest one that's there in kind.
Jesse?
Yes. I'll go back.
I had a question on the IDA. I just want to make sure, because I didn't understand it, the one that was previously abandoned, that you are now requesting that it be put back online?
Correct.
Okay, and that is related to the fact that there is increased usage?
Capacity.
Capacity,
Correct.
okay.
Your
So
demand
that-
has gone up.
Okay, because I couldn't figure out exactly what that change was. I didn't get it from the reading material, so I wanted to make sure that was okay.
Yeah.
And then I did have a question. This is just a kind of a technical thing. On the ferrous iron, why is it important to transition the ferrous iron into ferric iron? I mean, I understand that ferrous iron is, I believe that is water soluble. So is the whole point is to remove that iron and put it in a state where it becomes non-soluble, which is the ferric state, so that the filter filters out? Is that it?
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
And what also happens,
All right.
what also happens is in that low service wet well,
Yeah.
it allows that also to, what we can get to solidify and drop out. And there are manhole covers at both ends along with the backwash surge tank that the plant can actually suck sludge, iron sludge, right out of the bottom of those basins.
So
So
the-
believe it or not, right under these, in that low service wet well, what we don't see is where the water falls in. It builds up around the corners over time. You'll see a sludge bed. So as part of the regular maintenance, that gets vacuumed out of there. Without these, we'd be trying to shove that right through the filters. Without making that conversion first, you wouldn't get it.
So that's why you have to make that conversion in order for the filter to filter that iron out.
Purely a physical process,
Yep.
no chemicals required. It's kind of neat.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Was there a chemical?
Not yet.
That, okay. So that's the function that the filter actually does is, okay, all right. I think that was it I had on the, the other question I did have on the IDA, a little bit of an inconsistency I just wanted to ask you about. On page 2 of the report, you're saying that you are, we are to replace the abandoned IDA, and you want inspections to commence either semi-annually or annually. Then when I go to page 3-2, when we're specifically talking about the IDA, now you're saying that recommend inspections be done every year, and this, in the next 3 to 5 years, is proper maintenance. So what is it? Is it, do we start the maintenance program in the next 3 to 5 years on these IDAs, or should this be something that should be started immediately on an annual basis?
I'm a firm believer in regular operation and maintenance. So it should be, the manufacturer recommends annual or biannual, and I think they say that because of the type of raw water. It's going to vary by what's coming out of the ground here versus what's coming out of the ground in Pennsylvania, for example. Fact of the matter is biannual is the minimum. Annual would be fantastic, but quite frankly, biannual is probably reasonable to start out with this one. But it's got to be done, because if it hasn't been done at all, then we need to start.
Do
And
you
then
know
put
if
on a
it,
program where we're doing it biannually.
has it been done at all?
We don't.
You don't
Hubbell
maintain.
Clark's a designer of the facility and of the process and a troubleshooter. We don't operate your plant. We don't maintain your plant. Mr. Varney is brand new, so I don't know if he can answer that question either.
Since I've been here.
Really?
Not since July.
Probably not before that either.
Probably not.
Probably not. Interesting. Here's the reason why I kind of am sticking on these maintenance issues. Because generally, when you have a product, especially in a facility or plant like this, whenever you have a product, your manufacturer provides you with a warranty. And those warranties are pretty specific about what you have to do to keep that warranty in place. So I'm sitting here and I'm saying to myself, if there hasn't been maintenance done on some of these products that we may still have a warranty on, then are we jeopardizing our warranties by not getting on that maintenance program? Because I'll tell you this right now. You try to get a replacement part, I'm going to tell you, because I used to work for an insurance defense firm. And the first thing we would do is we would subpoena the maintenance records. And if your maintenance records were not lined up with the conditions in that warranty, you're going to have your claim denied. So I'm just sort of setting that out there. I don't know if it's there or not there, but I'm just raising a red flag to say there's a reason why you have to maintain your property. And part of it has to do with keeping those warranties in place. So it's imperative that some of the, especially in a place like over there at the water.
Now, what I can tell you is that when the 2001 plant was completed, an operations and maintenance manual was prepared and provided to the city. And really what's in there is all the equipment manufacturers, literature, data, your warranties, it's all there. It's all there. And the same thing would be created after this maintenance project too. Here's your operation and maintenance plan. So this project does give you a chance to sort of kickstart that again.
Start over?
But that's a minimum. When we turn over a project and it's complete, it doesn't get finalized till the O&M manual's handed off to the owner. Again,
But
where
somebody
that,
has,
unfortunately, there's been so much changeover.
Yeah.
I mentioned someone, David Miller. He was a man that worked at the city for, I believe, 35 years. He was one of the best water treatment and wastewater maintenance individuals I've ever worked with. I had the pleasure of working with. And unfortunately, that institutional knowledge is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a new director who is an O&M believer as well. And I think going forward that those issues can be minimized.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, can we move on from the induced draft aerators? We got one more topic to cover, and of course, this one, we've already covered it a few times. Again, we wrote our first evaluation on this. We were called in 2015 to come look at it. I think I included that memo when I came to you and talked to you about the proposal to do this CIP work. And as you can see, we included some updated photos. Unfortunately, the tank, it's not stopping. It's going to continue to degrade. And you can see there in the photos now, we had some exposed pre-stressed strands of steel before. In this one photo alone, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 of them and a nice pop out. This photo on the upper right is from an exterior repair where some epoxy injection molding was attempted to try to minimize some leakage that was being observed. But quite frankly, this tank, it's salvageable. My structural engineers don't seem to think that it's unsalvageable. The issue is getting in there and doing it from the inside. You cannot fix these tanks from the outside. It's impossible. So we all know that we can't fix this tank until we get a new tank built. So during the off season, we can do that. And again, remember that new tank isn't just for this. It's to meet your true fire flow and your current peak demand. So these are just more, photos are indicative of what's happening. In fact, if we were to proceed, we make that note here in the last bullet that the external repairs can be performed before the alternate. That should be concurrent, because what I would do is actually get going on that as one of the first items when we release this. There's no reason why we can't do our exterior work on this tank that we need to do while the new tank's being built. And that way, when the new tank's disinfected, tested, and ready to go, we're ready to go to drain this thing and get going on the inside. So there'll be a very stringent and rigid sequence of construction for this project to make sure that we maintain our fire flow and pressure and volume at all times through construction. It'll be very rigid.
Excuse me. I'm new, so I don't know on this one, but I read through this memo from 2015. So did none of this get done?
The short-term or immediate repairs got done, and that's what you're seeing in that upper right-hand photo here.
Okay.
That used to be a little stream of water trickling down on the outside of that tank. And we recommended some local waterproofing contractors that could come in and do an emergency. Again, they drilled and epoxy injected that to stop the water from leaking. So that's good, because now that water's not passing through all that reinforcement that's there too. It's at least stopped. That's what happened in the lower left-hand picture. Water's just continuing to come through that area, and it's eating away at those pre-stressed steel strands. We don't want that. That's why. So yes, the short-term immediate was done, but I think that at that time it was realized that to do this right, you got a much bigger project on your hands. So what that does is it brings us to, again, where we are with, these are the 4 elements of what we're calling the Phase 1 CRP. These are the most critical elements that need to be addressed. So we've listed, and there's very, very detailed.
Excuse me, I wanted to go back to well 6. And this was the discussion that you and I had prior to the meeting, give the benefit to my colleagues up here. And this is regarding the switch. The pressure switch and flow control valve are no longer in service. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
Now, is this something?
Let me go back to the aerial. It's a little clearer when we're looking at this. Okay. What we're talking about here is that well 3 here, well 6. Back when we did the project in 1991, in order to meet firm capacity, meaning that you could meet your peak hour demand with your largest pump out of service. That's high service pump, well, your largest, you got to take one out of service and make sure you can still meet it. The only way we could do that back then was we actually put in a pressure switch in well number 3 because, well, let's call it well 6 now, right? It's well 6. That raw water historically goes straight to the steel mill. It always did prior to 2001, straight to the steel mill. It was piped to go into a common pipe with well number 4 and come into our plant, but it was valved off. So when we were going through this with the state almost 20 years ago, they said, well, how much water is the steel mill using? Back then, I don't know if you remember, the steel mill was going through a lot of different changes. It wasn't pumping like it's pumping steel today. Things were different. They were only using 200-300 gallons per minute of water, really low. And that plant was, or that pump at well 20 years ago was pushing 1,200 gallons per minute. So the states, we came up with this solution together. We said, well, how do we get that? Well, we got an idea. We can put in a pressure switch in this well, and we put in a flow control valve that's right here. And it's just outside of the induced draft aerators. It might be that manhole right there, actually. And what would happen is we would test this in that we would literally shut off all of the wells manually. The last time I did this was with David Miller. We shut off all of the wells on purpose. We made the low service wet well go down to a point where the system would start experiencing low pressure. And sure enough, our pressure switch that's on these lines picked up that, and the flow control valve cracked open, and we started bringing in water from well number 6. So we shared water, if you will, with the tube mill.
With the tube mill.
Correct. Okay. And again, that satisfied DEQ, no problem. Here's your permit. Let's go. Here we are, 19. We're pushing 20 years later. I was informed not long ago that this flow control valve is not operational anymore. So
Who told you that?
I believe it was Mr. Ron Beeson. When we were kicking off this report, he informed me. I believe that was before Doug was even on board with the city. And he had told me that he had contacted the supplier, and the supplier had met with him out there. And basically, again, it's 20 years old. It's sort of a, it's not your standard turn a valve. It's complicated from the standpoint. It's got sensors on it. There are things that essentially, again, are antiquated. Basically, the manufacturer said, we don't make this anymore. We don't make this anymore. You can either pull it out and just put a straight pipe in here if you're not using it. One thing led to another. My understanding is there's been discussions with Eagle where Doug and Mr. Beeson have been involved with Eagle, and they've essentially said that that needs to be reinstated to make sure that we can borrow that excess capacity still there to maintain our firm capacity. So we had some discussions about it. I did not put that in the total budget because we had some discussions about these guys doing it themselves. It was really one of those things. I mean, they could do it and order it and get it done. It's a pretty straightforward valve that just goes in there. UIS is the controls provider that can simply reinstate the pressure switch. The pressure switch is still there in well number 6. So that's something that can be reinstated with little engineering oversight because the infrastructure is already there. We can make it part of this project, absolutely, if you wish. We could do that. I felt it was very important to discuss it. And you notice I brought that up at the end of that first chapter because it was something that we learned really at the tail end of this process. It wasn't even in our scope of our initial priority elements, but it's come up as a result of meetings with the Eagle coming out and meeting with the staff because they're currently writing their 2020 sanitary survey for this plant. And when that comes out, they're going to list all of the short-term, long-term recommendations that need to be performed. It's my understanding that this report has been shared with them already, and it's also my understanding that they were very receptive to see that we were ahead of it, and these were the items that were basically showing up on their list. I haven't seen again, we don't have a time frame, and I haven't seen their actual survey yet. But essentially, it's validating the things that are being shown need to be worked on very quickly.
Well, then you just answer the question very quickly. So how long has this switch not been working? First of all, this is a critical element, correct? This is something that has to be working? Okay, so how long has it been out? Do we know?
I don't know
At least
that.
a year, maybe more. Probably, okay. So this is not good news. So if it's something that should be done immediately, when I went and tallied on the cost estimate over here, and you and I talked about this just prior to the meeting, I put on here, added the switch replacement because that appeared to be a little bit costly, correct?
Well, I don't think the pressure switch is the big cost over
It's
at
the valve.
Well 6. It's the valve.
It's the valve.
Flow control valves. You know, it's not your typical gate valve. It might be a $50,000 or $60,000 piece of equipment, and not including installation. So again, I don't know if that's something that DPW has the capability of undertaking, but it was a discussion that we've had, and it can certainly be added if it's determined that DPW is not going to move forward and just do that. And I say that because we'll get to the schedule, but the design and the construction, of all this is going to take some time.
And how important is it for the construction of well 2A?
I would actually, there are two different bins. The flow control valve and pressure switch can be restored relatively quickly and immediately. It's pulling it out, putting another one
Put
in.
a new one in, exactly.
Well number 2, because Eagle will not let us put on one just outside of it because of that sanitary sewer like they did up in the park, they've already, from my understanding, again, I'm getting some of this stuff secondhand, but my understanding is that they want us to investigate another location within the park at this point that would have to take the place of the currently derated well number 2.
But what's the urgency on that?
I would start that today.
Are you serious?
You've got a well that's producing 20% of what it used to,
What it
and it's
used to.
gone down relatively quickly from what I understand. It went 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. So
What's the time frame here? Past year, past 2 years, past 3 years?
Performance of 2? Less than 3 years.
something like that.
And that cost is not included in this bid either, correct?
That is not in there either.
And
But
what-
again, I thought it was important to talk about. It was not in the scope of our original CIP, but it was learned from visits that Eagle was making out on the site with DPW and the information was being transferred to us.
So the state's aware of this?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Now, keep in mind, too, back when we did the DWRF, remember the water main project, we actually tried to build a new well outside of our well field, as a safety factor. We wanted to put one over here on the west side of town, outside of that wellhead capture zone, as kind of a insurance policy, if you will. That wasn't authorized as an eligible expense by the Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund at that time. Quite frankly, they wanted the city to perform the due diligence on the engineering, go secure property agreements, pay for a test well to be drilled, prove that you could actually produce 1,000 gallons per minute, et cetera. They wanted those steps to be gone through. So we've been talking about adding another well
Yeah.
for a long time. This is not the first time this has come up. However, it is the derating that seems to be accelerating more rapidly in the last year. I mean, that I've heard about this. That gives me cause to say it should be done sooner rather than later, whether that's in our aquifer or outside of our aquifer. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, you've been very detailed. This is what we need to hear. I mean, very detailed.
Well, before you go on, I don't know, Doug, you're pretty well read into the idea of that valve, correct?
Yes.
Okay, because I've been led to believe that our guys are perfectly capable of handling the transition to put a new valve in there.
Definitely.
So, I mean, the idea, why would we add you stepping on the cost of doing something that we can do in-house? So, that's
No,
my
I
point.
specifically made that statement that could be done.
Yeah.
It was suggested by these guys that they could do it. Yeah.
I just wanted everybody else to understand that we can handle
yeah.
that without having to add the cost of HRC on that, that's all.
Yeah.
And again, when we did that before, it was part of, a much bigger project. It was just one other piece of the puzzle that was needed to get that permitting from DEQ.
Right,
20 years ago.
right. But that problem's been solved, it just needs to be fixed now, yeah.
Yep.
I got a question.
Okay, so where we left off were,
Councilman, sorry.
yeah.
Councilman Richards, go ahead.
Okay, Jesse, it's my understanding, you put, the map is gone right now, but,
You want to go back to the
yeah,
map?
go back to the map.
Sure.
It's my understanding that last summer, I think I was over there when they did it, that they installed a valve at, just off the line from well number 3 up there, that had the capacity, that goes straight to the tube mill.
Right.
That if necessary, it can now be switched and go straight over here to the treatment plant. Okay, that water can be diverted, okay? We have the capacity to do that. It's right there, okay?
You are correct, but with the current pressure switch in there and the flow control valve not operational, it's one or the other.
The other.
You shut the tube mill off,
We'll have zero water.
Yeah. Yeah.
or you shut the city off. The reason that system's in place is to allow them both to use what they need.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
well, I'm just,
Yep, you're absolutely right, though. You're absolutely right. We can shut the tube mill off and take that water, but we don't want to do that.
I have some more question and answer at the right time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay, so our recommended actions were to, at minimum, authorize approval for all 4 of the elements of the Phase 1 CIP. And the costs have been, they're totalized here, but in the report, you have a detailed breakdown, multiple elements that make up these costs. So we're coming up with preliminary, that's a total project cost. So again, you're going to see that throughout these estimates. You'll see 10% contingencies, 25% for engineering, administration, legal. We've got a lot of built-in contingencies up front because we haven't gotten into the design yet. I would like to tell you that this is going to come in lower than this, but I don't like to be low bidder. I don't want to be too high either. But I think we can do it for less than this, but I feel comfortable with this amount of contingency in the project right now, with you budgeting and looking forward to it. If we do better, fantastic. And you can see that in the estimates. Some of the straightforward stuff have less contingencies. Some of the bigger stuff, you'll see that 10% and that 25% because there's just so many unknowns, like with the tank, the geotechnical, the piping, the connections. There's a lot of things we just don't know. But when it comes right down to it, I think if we were authorized to begin the design, you'd be looking at ultimately a total investment of this Phase 1 CIP of about $4.3 million. Now, you say, well, we don't have that. I get it. Nobody's got that. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
We're good for it.
Good stuff. So what I did was I talked to Paul about, what are we budgeting? When we had this conversation about budgeting way back, and we knew that we didn't have enough money in the budget to do this magnitude of work, even before we did the CIP. I said, $1 million, there's just no way you're going to knock off these things that haven't been done in 20 years at this plant with the change in demographics and whatnot. So what we try to do is to lay this out so you could see what the time frame would be for making these investments. So this is a very aggressive schedule as far as kicking it off here. You can see that we're showing basically design starting in December. And that includes, again, DEQ, permitting, everything that's necessary. That's very aggressive. If anything were to slide here, this whole thing would just do this. And that let's just be honest, folks. We only know what we know right now. Until we get into design and start with the regulators, there's a chance that some of this could shift. But it is set up right now to basically try to get through the design and the beginning of the tank construction prior to the end of this fiscal year. If we can do that, there's a good chance we can spend a good chunk of this money. We probably won't spend it all. So this may shift somewhat. But in a perfect world, right now, if we were able to go bid this thing in the spring, start construction, maybe late spring, early summer, there's a good chance we could get going on that tank and even pay for some of that initial cost with foundation work, maybe some piping work, that kind of stuff. Maybe we could actually spend what's allocated for this fiscal year. Again, if that gets delayed, then we're going to have to earmark that and push it into the next. But essentially, this is have to go likely, and again, this is just due to duration, sequencing, when we can construct, when we can't, because of your high peak periods. Mm-hmm. We're looking at a project that's more than likely going to span through 2022 at minimum. At minimum. That's today. So I just want to make that clear to everybody. When we're in 2023 and we're talking about this, if things have shifted, there's going to be a good reason, and everybody will know this will shift basically every budget year. When you guys start talking about budgets in February, March, and April for your hearings, this is when we'll be looking at this. How much do we spend? What do we need to do? What do we need to reallocate? And we do that until the project's done.
So your Gantt chart here, Jesse, I mean, it shows that those projects don't start until all those upfront activities take place. You're assuming that those are all predecessor activities in order for every one of these projects to start. Okay.
Correct.
My question to you is, how many of those projects could start if you weren't involved in them prior to those points?
Actually,
let's talk about the filter project, for instance.
Right.
Okay? I mean, the filter project itself is, we're going to have the vendor come out.
Yep.
They're going to suck out the existing media. You've already done the integrity test on the vessel.
Yep.
We know that it needs to be sealed at the sample ports. We're going to refill the unit and put them back online.
Yep.
Okay. Now, I don't know if the city manager has had a discussion with the director for the water and DPW. Is that something that we could handle in-house, in which case those projects could potentially move upstream and start sooner? Because there's no additional engineering and construction involved in that, from what I heard you mentioned, plus what's in the packet.
Oh, no, there's a competitive bidding process that I think the city likes to go through.
Yeah, that's fine. But that's, again,
there's a contract.
They take care of that themselves. They could handle that bidding process. It isn't dependent on you completing that portion of the process.
If you have a qualified professional engineer on staff, in-house, that can sign, seal the documents, get the permitting from the DEQ, get a contract in place, the insurances that protect you all, oversee the construction, the shop drawings, and again, follow the regs, then by all means, you could do all this on your own.
Well, no, I mean, obviously, some of it is far more technical.
The only
requires
to
far
be
more
honest,
engineering than
yeah.
some of the other ones.
I would not put the horizontal pressure filters in that bin.
Okay.
The one project out of these four that could, I
The
believe
IDA?
that these guys could do is the IDA.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a like-for-like
Because we
replacement.
brought these guys right out here
Two
again.
pipes,
I agree.
pull it out, drop the new one in.
I think that they could easily work directly with the manufacturer and get that done.
Okay.
I
Okay.
agree.
And again, I'm just looking at it to say, is it a buffet or is it a full 5-course meal that we're looking at here? If it's a buffet, then maybe there's a project that we can manage.
Maybe But keep in mind, too, that project isn't necessarily nearly as critical as the other ones.
I understand that, but I'm also looking at the layout of your project here.
Right,
It
the
isn't,
timeline.
you know, none of the other projects are dependent on that one. Okay, it doesn't affect any of the others from a timing standpoint, et cetera. So, I mean, we could do that without impacting or being under the gun to adversely affect the other projects.
I would think that the only tangible benefit you could get about pulling it into the overall project is you could probably get economy of scale and a better bid price on it, because you're going to have one general, one mechanical doing it all, be a lot more competitive. But that's about the only tangible. I think these guys, though, yeah, I think they can handle that.
So, you know, when you bid this thing, you bid 4 projects, you know, with the individual engineering costs and so forth. Is there an economy of scale pulling them together so that you look at it holistically, less engineering costs, less administration, if I'm going to do the whole ball of wax?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm not seeing it because I don't see that it was priced like that. So
Well,
that's
again,
why
the
I'm just
fact of
asking
the matter
question.
is if Doug was to go out and do this himself, he'd still have to have the contractor provide bonds, still have to have the contractor provide insurance.
I'm looking at if you did it. I mean, I know that the way you have that laid out in there, you've got 4 individual projects, and here's your multiplier in there for the administration, engineering, and so forth. You know, and again, you know, I mean, if we had a qualified engineer on staff, we might do some of those in-house. If we were to let the project to you and do the whole thing together, does that multiplier go down for the thing if it's let to you as holistically from the individual estimates you have right now?
I think
I'm just curious if there's a savings there.
I don't think I can give you a direct answer on that, to be honest. And I say that because there's so much contingency built into the others because of what we don't know. That fee could come down as well. You're only going to do what you have to do. We don't work for you on a lump sum basis. We work for you on a not to exceed. So if the budget is $300,000, it only takes $200,000 to get through this whole process. That's all you get billed for.
Okay.
Okay? There is no lump sum in what we do. We ask you to budget for a percentage. Again, we're saying about 25% for engineering, legal, and administrative, because we're at planning level. We're very early in the process. Likely a lot of those contingencies are going to come down once we know all the answers. So right now I can't really tell you the exact amount. I see where you're getting. You know, is it cheaper through the engineering now because you're peeling off the edge? Well, from a direct, yeah, take out the contingency that we put on there for that. At least remove that out of there. Yes, but as for the whole project, until we get closer to, until we bid them even. You know, we don't know exactly what the true value is of this work. We're doing our best based on all the knowledge we have, but the market and the industry is what really speaks for the cost of these projects. And that's why they're estimated. They have to be.
Okay, thanks.
Is Eagle not being overly resistant going to play a role in where those costs lie? I mean, yeah, clearly, if they're going to be hard-nosed about number 2 and things of that nature, that's going to end up changing the environment. But most of the stuff, it doesn't seem like the horizontal pressure filters, unless they insist on some different medium, there's not going to be a real likelihood that they're going to impose themselves on that, is there?
I don't believe so. I
Yeah,
think
I
the
wouldn't have
media
thought
is
so.
the big issue there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Councilmember Walton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a quick question in regards to what Steve was saying. Is yes, it does make sense for us to go ahead and replace some of these things, but you don't paint the wall before you patch work. So is there a particular order that these things really need to be done in? Would we be putting our cart before the horse if we just went ahead and made these repairs on our own and then went back and did all the bigger pressure?
Again, I think the flow control valve is probably the most easy to do in-house.
But is it going to be damaged if we do it first and then go back and do some of this other stuff? It's not going to.
All you're doing there is
Anyway?
restoring a process that was already in place and approved by the state. In fact, my understanding is they said it needed to be restored. That was the conversation, was you need to restore this so it meets the intent of how we've approved this plan.
Perfect.
So that one to me is kind of a no-brainer, but that's not on these four.
Right.
As far as these four again goes, though, again, the induced draft aerator replacement, it's pretty cut and dried.
Well, I mean, you show, based on the way you have the plan depicted here, none of these projects is dependent on any of the others. They all show as being independent. None of them are,
Well, the increased storage capacity and the tank repairs are connected.
let's go back.
Absolutely.
Let's go back and look at the Gantt chart, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so where's the tank? Here's the tank renovation down here, all right? It's just got to finish over at this point in 21, 22 is what you're saying, all right? But
Yeah.
the start of any of the other projects is not dependent on any of these things. I mean, they all can start concurrently, the way that Gantt
Well,
chart is.
no. Yeah, here it is. See, we got the new tank construction, hopefully, starting here.
Yep,
And you see this blue line?
yep.
This has to be built, done, brought online, this tied over. So this is, I died here. Okay. The black line left of the blue line coming down in April of 2021
Right.
is only external repairs.
So what is this one? It's hard to see because the lines don't come across. And the light blue line over here, where it says, is that part of the tank renovation, the external repairs?
Can't
Right
see
here.
which line you're referring
This one right here, this little blue line that's starting right here. And I can't see what it is. Is
This
that
one?
Right there. What is that? What
That
is
says
it?
external repairs, that's
Okay,
correct.
so you can start that right now.
It's the internal repairs, you see that?
Oh, yeah, I understand the
Yeah, yeah.
internal
So
repair,
that-
yeah. I mean, till we offload the water, obviously.
It's a little confusing, but
Right.
yeah, that's what that's showing.
But again, those projects could start simultaneously, the way you have it listed.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
I think that's what
External,
Councilmember
yeah,
Walton was.
I thought I made that point, that external, we can
did.
get going on that while we're doing the new tank. Absolutely, we should do the external repairs.
Okay.
Councilmember Kurtzwell, did you have something still?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The one thing that was missing that I would have liked to have seen on this is a fiscal impact with respect to the budget. Is it my understanding, if things get approved, that we have budgeted 1.3 million out of water and sewer for what needs to be done in 2019 and 2020?
That's correct.
Okay, so that money is there. But what would happen if we had a mill increase that was specifically targeted for 2021, because that mill would come off in 2 years after the project was done? In other words, I heard several times by the gentleman, urgent, now, immediate. State tipped us off. State knows. And I'm saying to myself, why are we waiting if some of these are fairly urgent to complete in 2022? I understand because of budget issues, but I would have liked to have seen how much money we could have raised by increasing a mill for 2 years, and I would have liked to have seen where are we at with the water study in terms of that.
Well, the water and sewer, if I may, Mr. Mayor, the water and sewer rate analysis is coupled with the information that are going to be provided here tonight. We're also working with staff as it relates to the sewer portion, because we want to develop a sewer capital improvement plan as well. The money that we have budgeted for this year, the 1.3 million, does take down a little bit for our fund balance, but still after that, after the expenditure of 1.3 million, I believe we still have a $6 million fund balance in water and sewer. We would look at the way they're proposing it here, $2 million with the next year's budget. We already had budgeted as future, as a guesstimate for next year, $1 million within the budget for capital improvements for the water portion, and that would drop down. So we can definitely prepare how the budget will look specifically for this particular fund based upon these expenditures, based upon some of the other expenditures that we're looking for on the sewer end of it. And then we have to figure out what potentially, how that may impact our water and sewer rate analysis, so we can ensure that we have enough funds going forward to do these repairs as well as future repairs, because we may not even need to look at adding any sort of millage or anything like that. But if it does drop down enough, or we feel that we need to do that, then we would make that recommendation. But this is the first part of this, because we first met, I believe it was in December of last year, or November of last year, kind of go over in all of our infrastructure within the city, and we started to talk about some of these things particular, and then we allocated funds several months ago to have them start this capital improvement plan for the water plant.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because when I looked at the proposed budget for 2019, 2020, we have total revenues around $3 million and total expenditures around $5 million. So you have your fund balance is decreasing because your expenditures are exceeding your revenues anyway, and now you're telling me that 1.3 is coming out of this fund balance?
Yes, of course it is, because it is part of the water and sewer rate fund. That is already reflected in the final numbers that you see there within the fund balance is 6.2 million.
I mean, we can have I don't want to tie the meeting up on this, but I'm just saying that to me, it's a necessity. I am not pleased to hear that some of this has been sitting on a back burner for a while, and we are playing catch-up. And I'm just trying to reconcile it from a fiscal impact. And I wish I would have had a fiscal impact analysis done for me tonight so I could take a good look at it and do that additional level of analysis.
And
that's all. That's all.
And we can still do that, and part of that's going to be the water and sewer analysis that we're looking at, because this information is being provided to Plant Moran, who's performing that, as well as the other information that we're gathering from the sewer portion, so we can try to determine what our expenditures are, what our expected revenues are, so we can determine how do we influx that with our sewer and water rates to make sure that we do have enough funds there so we can do these planned improvements in future years, so we don't necessarily have to go out and bond for them, or don't necessarily have to borrow money to get them done, because I'd rather have it come out of the water and sewer rate fund balance. So if it's a $1 million project, so we don't have to borrow that and have it cost $1.3 million to the residents instead over a 10 or 20 year period.
Bond rates are low right now. And just, interest rates are, I'm just talking out loud, that's all. Okay, thank you.
I've got something.
Councilmember Richards.
Is it, just clear up one question on here. During the phase of this changeover construction, it's my understanding that water has to keep circulating on the inside of the tank, the storage tank at all times. It just doesn't sit there like a pan, okay? It keeps
correct.
moving around. Would we be able to do that, okay? And keep the water quality, okay, if we don't have a aerator or a agitator or whatever you want to call it?
That's a very, very, very good question. You're absolutely right. We don't want stagnant water. So when I mentioned that we'd have a very detailed sequence of construction, that's primarily related to the new ground storage tank and the rehabilitation of the existing, because those are the most critical to make sure that we got one done before the other and we get water moving. The induced draft aerator, nothing's going through it now. Again, you're replacing something that's abandoned in place, so that's really should be taken out of the conversation on scheduling. The critical element is that we build the new ground storage tank in the spring and summer months when you have your peak demand, so you can continue to operate with your 1 million gallon ground storage tank and your 500,000 gallon elevated storage tank the way you have been. We don't take the ground storage tank, the 1 million gallon off, until your peak demand season has subsided. In your case, that's after about August 15th. Then, that's what I meant. So at that time, the city's historic use, a 600,000 gallon ground storage tank and a 500,000 gallon elevated storage tank is plenty to carry you through the winter, even with your fire flow. It's no problem. It's that July, August that really hurt us with the fact that we could not have that ground storage tank offline, not have the new ground storage tank built. So when we build the new one, and it's all disinfected, and we convert over there, that water will be turned over, no problem. It's sized perfectly, actually. That's what your normal use is, actually. That's about 500,000 gallons, about 100,000 more in the winter period. So that's how we landed on that number. And so it's really critical that the sequence be proper, that we don't take the existing 1 million gallon off to the 600,000 gallons, fully operational, fully disinfected, fully vetted. Then you're moving that water and turning it over the whole time. Then we get done with the internal repairs to the 1 million gallon existing tank. We bring them both back online. The control set points get modified so that we're continually cycling through water.
Could you move the media components from the present tank over to the new tank we're going to construct, okay, and then have brand-new components put into the new tank we're going to refurbish?
There's no media at all in the ground storage tanks.
It's just water.
Fill pipes, suction pipes, that's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The media is in the long metal horizontal pressure filter tanks.
Okay.
And those will come down, again, one at a time. Maybe two at a time if it's in off-peak. We can get away with taking two off at a time. That's the whole idea. Your diurnal pattern, through the winter really goes down. And we get through August and you really drop.
Okay, can you put the map back on? I'll show you something.
Sure.
Okay. Where you are right here with this tank, that's, I lived not too far from there, and when they dug that hole, I observed it a lot of times, and the quality of the sand, no rocks hardly, and it was all virgin ground, completely.
That's good.
Okay, across the street here is sort of a plateau, and Parks and Recs at once upon a time wanted to put a flat top tank, a ground level tank that would be like 180 feet long or something like that, once upon a time. I was on that commission. We turned it down. We didn't, or Beebe, Lyndon Beebe, a man that was a water department head, said, no, we can't do it, it'll cost too much money, engineering and such. But over here where your idea to put this new replacement tank, I concur, it's probably the best place. But just to let you know.
Right there?
That
Yeah.
is not virgin ground there. Okay?
Right.
But I'll let you know this, there's no peat under there. You don't have to worry about that. But that parcel of land was open pit mined, okay? Starting in 1880s, maybe earlier or later 70s, and it was closed up 1921, 22, okay? And along in World War II, a trailer park was built over a good portion of that, okay? And the deepest manhole that's on the whole place, okay, is 7 feet from the open gate. The gate that's over there by the generator, okay, by the generator.
Yep.
Okay, to the west, there's a manhole, and the structure goes down 12 and a half feet, I believe, okay? And that's the deepest one of the bunch. And the drain goes off of it, and it comes out just the east of our bridge over there in McCaddy Park. The first bridge, the metal bridge that Tube Mill put in.
Yep.
And that's where that drain comes out, okay? But it's not functional anymore, but I'm saying that's where it was built. It was...
Councilmember Richards, can you get to the point that you're going to on this?
Okay, all right. All I'm saying is with this information, I'd like to say save you and us hundreds of thousands of dollars, okay? But it may not matter that it's not virgin ground, okay, with what you want to do. But I'm just throwing it out there for your information. I've told your other associates some of this also, in previous times. but since we're on this in the meeting, and this is very important, it's the first thing that's going to happen, I thought I'd make sure I got it through, mentioned it to you, because you know me, okay, and you know I have some history. Okay, anyway, that's all, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Thank you, Jesse.
And I can appreciate that. And to answer Councilman Richard's question, again, no design would proceed without a thorough geotechnical evaluation to identify constructability, feasibility, foundation recommendations. And if it was determined to be an inordinate amount of cost to build in that location, then we certainly would be looking somewhere else. But that's the first order of business to be done.
Yeah, just letting you know, it's not virgin
I
ground.
appreciate the information.
Okay.
So we have our schedule, talked a little bit about the budget scattered over the next few years. Again, our summary, those are our four major components. We need to get on with design. I know we've answered a lot of questions. Is there any additional questions at this time?
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Point of information, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, certainly.
Mr. Mayor, was this on the agenda for action tonight or just presentation?
No, just presentation, discussion.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Does anyone have anything else for Jesse tonight? Thank you. Incredibly information gathering, and I know you guys are fantastic at communicating and getting back to us if anyone comes up with anything, and reaching out to you guys. So thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent presentation.
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'll be discussing with this after the meeting with the members of HRC, not necessarily tonight, but trying to figure out when we move forward regarding the resolution on moving forward with the adoption of one of these particular items, and based upon all the discussion that took place tonight, so we'll expect this back at the next meeting.
Okay.
Great. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks again. All right. So moving on to old business number 1, second reading of ordinance to amend the South Lyon Code of Ordinances to update the charge of domestic violence to make it consistent with state law.
Mayor, this item is an item Chief Sovic asked to be put on the agenda, and I prepared at his request. You might recall we had brief discussions about the benefits of having a local ordinance in addition to having a percentage of the revenue come to the city. It's also a lot easier to initiate cases against defendants if you can write a ticket versus having to go to the state law prosecutor for a state law violation. The only difference between the state law violation and our local ordinance is that dating relationship was omitted from the local ordinance for domestic assault and battery. And this second reading in this ordinance would amend the ordinance to add it back in.
Excellent. Does anyone have any questions for Chief Sovic or Lisa?
Make the motion, though. I make the motion that we approve the second reading of Section 58 to 51 to make consistent with state law.
I support.
All right. We have a motion by Councilmember Kivel, supported by Councilmember Walton, to approve the second reading of the ordinance amending Section 58-51 to make it consistent with state law. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Old business number 2 this evening, the second reading of ordinance to amend the South Lyon Code of Ordinances to update provisions prohibiting the use of marijuana in accordance with new legislation.
Again, this item I asked to be placed on the agenda because last November, recreational marijuana became legal in the state of Michigan, yet our ordinances still prohibited it. So what we did was we went through our current ordinances and we modified it to be consistent with state law, and that is to prohibit it for minors under the age of 21 and certain locations where it's prohibited, as well as in aligning the violations for first and second violations with state law.
Excellent. Does anyone have any questions for Lisa on that? Councilmember Kurtzwell?
I move to approve the second reading of the ordinance amending Section 58-221 to make it consistent with state law.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Kurtzwell, supported by Councilmember Walton, to approve the second reading of the ordinance amending various sections of Chapter 58, Article 6, offenses involving drugs, to make the ordinance consistent with state law. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Old business number 3 this evening, second reading of ordinance to amend the South Lyon Code of Ordinances to update provisions prohibiting the use of vapor products and alternative nicotine delivery products by minors in accordance with new legislation.
Once again, Mr. Mayor, this ordinance, you might recall I reminded you that you were ahead of the game in the city. You had adopted already an ordinance that prohibited vaping, but after you made that adoption and you enacted this ordinance, state law came out and we tweaked our existing ordinance to be consistent with state law. Some stylistic, some definitional changes, but primarily the penalties were changed. And so what's in front of you is making it consistent with state law.
Great. Any questions? Councilmember Kennedy.
I'd like to go ahead and make the motion to approve the second reading of the ordinance amending Section 58-221 to make it consistent with state law.
A second.
I support.
I had Councilmember Walton by a hair there.
No, it doesn't matter.
I know, it's all right.
All right, all right.
But we have a motion by Councilmember Kennedy, supported by Councilmember Walton, to approve the second reading of the ordinance amending Section 58-221 to make it consistent with state law. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Lisa, for the speed round. We will move on to new business this evening. With number 1 being pulled from the agenda, we will look at new business number 2, consider CDBG application projects for the city of South Lyon. Paul, you want to take the lead on that?
Yes, so the 2020 CDB application deadline is Friday, December 13th. On November 11th, 2019, at the regularly scheduled city council meeting, the city held a public hearing relating to the CDBG funds allocated to the city of South Lyon. The city's funding allocation for 2020 is $29,552. Suggestion is that we continue to use this allocation for 2020 to support the projects that we have funded in recent years, which is the senior center at Haven, and I have included the allocation and the information for you in tonight's packet. I have allocated on here $24,552 for the senior center and allocated $5,000 for the Haven for battered and abused individuals. And I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding this.
Want to make a motion?
Councilmember Kivel?
I make the motion that we approve the selected projects as identified.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Kivel, supported by Councilmember Kennedy, to approve the selected projects as identified. Any further discussion?
Solely that these are really good projects, and we've had a long-term relationship with these people, so.
I couldn't agree with you more, and
We do it every year.
I do, with my day job being at the school district, we support the senior center, and it is a very valuable asset to our senior community, so I'm glad to see this continuing. So, with that being said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. New business number 3, DDA request for additional funding for Cool Yule. Mr. Donahue.
Yes, I have Jeff Heinonen, who is the co-chair of this event. Jeff's on the DDA board, so Jeff is co-chair of this event. I just wanted to go through, make a couple comments, and go through real quick 11 points before we discuss. To begin with, in late spring, the Presbyterian Church informed the city and the DDA that it was no longer going to coordinate the 2019 Cool Yule. So at the DDA board meeting in May, it was discussed long pause, no one stepped forward, so we were worried about the future of the event. I stepped up and said that obviously it's not in my job description to do it, but we're not going to let this event fail. Jeff then immediately said he would co-chair it for a lot of obvious reasons. So at that point, in late May, we started to move forward. Of course, this was after the DDA and the city budget process for both the city and the DDA. And again, we did not want this event to fail. So in your packet tonight, there are 4 items. Of course, the agenda note, the Cool Yule 2019 budget, proposed budget. The third item, the Cool Yule work plan for the Cool Yule activities schedule. You can see on the budget that the $4,000 requested from the city will go specifically to the fire pits, security, and the porta-johns. The city has a promotions line item. Paul and I discussed this, and those would come from the general fund budget under your promotional item. $4,000 from the DDA will go specifically to promotions and marketing and the horse carriage rides. All other expenses on that budget will be funded by the Heinonen, actually the Carl and Joanne Foundation. And so while the city and the DDA of those 16,000 or so, let me go to the budget here. So of the 16,750, GDA and the city would match 8,000, and the remaining 8,750 of the public-private items would be funded by Carl and Joanne Foundation. Of course, I think it's important to note that there's an additional 56,000 that are going to be funded for this event, this community-wide event, just by for private aspects by Carl and Joanne Foundation. So, let's see here. Obviously, the goal is to give the city a quality event, better tie-in with the businesses downtown. The items that have been added from last year's, because we had a lot of complaints from downtown. First-time event with the tree, and the weather. The downtown really didn't know what to expect, so there was no tie-in with the downtown. In fact, most of the businesses closed. They kicked themselves when they saw it. They're like, "Oh my God, did we blow it?" So, but we not just being open, but tying in from the tree down Lafayette Street. As you know, you approved the closure of Lafayette Street from McCaddy to Lake to saturate that street full of activities, which are on the activity list, so that we can, in fact, better accommodate our businesses. The work plan, the items that are completed on the work plan, I know Councilperson Kennedy was requesting information. So as you look at the work plan, obviously we're still accepting parade that's coming on. Dana Johnson is doing a great job of, she stepped in late to handle coordinating the parade, and we're getting units as we speak. So we'll have more units than we had last year. I don't think it's where we want to be, but as coming into this late, I think we'll have a respectable parade with more lights than last year and more units than last year. The holiday market and the fire pits are being coordinated by Tim Davids, and we're still, the fire pits have all been adopted, so to speak. The fire marshal and the fire chief want us to have supervision of those fire pits throughout the event. So we're still accepting more people to the market. It's going to be a small market, but again, it's something we can build on. So those items are open, A and B, but the Historic Village activities are set. Actually, Dana has been coordinating with Linda Ross on those activities and giving us the information that we can update our PR, our city website, and all the Facebook pages. The movies in the street with Doug Varney's assistance, we learned more about the 3 or 4 city arrangement that we have with the movies in the park equipment. So we followed up, and Doug, in fact, will be able to go over and get the movies in the street from Canton Township so we can have those in the street as well. So that's been confirmed. Obviously, the tree purchase, the tree transport, the tree installation, the tree lighting has been completed. Horse carriage rides have been arranged. That item's been completed. The beer and wine tent rental, Jeff, check me if I've got some of these wrong.
No, you're right. It's completed.
If the beer and wine purchase for the tent, heating units for the tent, that was a near miraculous situation. Let me point out that we aren't just bringing in Gator heaters or the old torpedo heaters. I think everything that we've tried to do is do it in high quality, and I know that Jeff's standards are higher than probably most people. So if you look right now, there are heating units that are set by the building. And that's $37,000 that were donated for not only this year but for the future, that were donated to Jeff through his relationships with other companies. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Is that accurate?
That's correct.
So people that are in the tent will have the feeling as if they're in a building. So it's not going to be makeshift. The heating and light fixtures for the tent, the stage rental for the tent, the tables and chairs for the tent are all complete. We're still waiting for the final the sound. Where did we stand on the sound system for the parade and the tree lighting? That
We have that donated through FUMC, First United Methodist Church.
So we're waiting on that confirmation?
Yep.
or-
No, that is confirmed.
Okay.
Can you walk up, confirm that? That's completed, finished.
The music and entertainment fees for the activities in the tent, again, that's
That's
on.
completed. That's power
completed?
plated, right?
We're providing honorariums to high school and one other individual for the music around the fire pits. That is completed. The fire pits are not finished. Jeff's going to stay up for the next 2 weeks.
Those will be
24
finished on
hours a
time.
day to finish those, I think.
That's how that works. That's all right, though.
The firewood has been provided by Austin at South Lyon Cycle, Austin White. Donated them at no cost, by the way. The security, that is probably the figure on that is actually closer to $900 by cutting it to 1 evening instead of 2. So we're able to reduce. Originally, that was in the budget for twice that much. Promotions and marketing, the over-the-road banner went up today. Those have been delivered. So Jeff came down with our fire truck, still not in operation, our ladder truck. Jeff brought down and put the over-the-road banner. And then we also are putting up the yard sign with the same design. There's one out in the lobby. Those will all be through our community and the surrounding communities. The lighting on the sidewalk from the historic village, Dana and her husband are lighting the sidewalk between McCaddy Street and the historic village. Those have been secured. And we're still working on sponsorship, which would reduce that rest of that $16,750 in addition. The sponsorship is going to work on a lot of those other items beyond the city and the DDA's contribution. Jim Hamadi has had a very good day. Several sponsorships that he said he's going to be bringing in tomorrow. We're still trying to get final information on the church and school contacts, but I think we're in good shape. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are about 8 items that we still haven't been able to finish, but that's typical of an event like this. We're accepting money right to the bitter end. So.
Councilmember Kivel, go ahead.
I'm assuming that the volunteer board is still active. You guys are trying to solicit people to step up and
Absolutely.
and give some
volunteers,
assistance? Yeah,
Correct.
okay.
And that application is on the Carl and Joanne Foundation Facebook.
Okay.
So it's very easy. It's fully automated.
Okay.
Everything's there for you to
That's
use.
what I was going to ask, for where people reach out to you. for.
Correct, that would be
Yeah.
great. The more volunteers, the better. We do need almost 35 volunteers to hold the event. So anybody that's willing to help, believe me, please, we
Yeah.
need it.
Sounds good.
Great.
Secondly, I wanted to just say that obviously this has been sort of a mad dash at the end here. Everybody, I'm confident, everybody on this board wants to see this thing be successful. And it's, there's a lot of loose ends that we're hoping that next year this thing is a much more solid base where we're not doing this dash at the end of the year. So, but in the meantime, this has everything it needs to have legs, to be an annual event that'll be very successful. We just need to end up getting this thing more locked down so that we're not trying to figure it out every time we go into this.
I think those are good points. I think what we have, by really, the sponsorship window is really January through May, and we started at the end of May at the worst opportunity.
Right.
But we were able still, we were in competition with Ladies Night Out sponsorships, still sponsorships, late sponsorships for Pumpkin Fest,
Veterans
car
Memorial.
show, and then the most of my energy was put in to finalize the $50,000 worth of the Veterans Memorial. So we didn't have time, but what we have now is the opportunity to go into this is have a critique meeting in January and then go into the funding cycle properly and the planning from day one. And we haven't had that for 5 years.
Right, exactly, because it's changed hands every time it seems to be reoccurring. So, but it is critical, and we don't need to reinvent everything every time we move through this. We can augment, but we don't need to reinvent. So that'll be very helpful.
You know, I think it's just important to understand, though, an event like this is complex. There's 50 different sides of it. It's not like some of the other events we have here I mean, I don't want to use the word easy, but from my point of view, it's much easier. I mean, it's winter, weather's crazy. There's just so many different avenues of this. As you can see, the work plan here, it's very complex. Lots of things we're doing here. You know, we make a simple statement, like, for example, move a tree. That's not easy. It takes 50 people to do that, and it takes months of preparation. Little things like that. It just we tend to, you know, it's a very complicated event, very, very complicated. You should understand that. There's so much that goes on that is not here behind the scenes to make sure that this happens, because failure is not an option. This event has been poorly cared for. That stops. That's over now. That'll never happen again. Not on my watch. Okay?
But
it is
the
complicated.
problem is that the stuff that's all really locked down, you've already handled well in advance because you were prepared for it.
Months.
That's just it. When the management of the rest of the event was kind of lingering with nobody to take possession of that, that's where the problems lie. So that's what we have to avoid next year
Now that
and
we
consequent
understand the
years.
event better, right? We understand that part of it is something that I had been involved in prior. So it's something that, you know, I know Bob and I both understand the event better in terms of what has to happen on that end of things. And I think we just have a good feel for it now, far better than we did in May, that's for sure. We just landed here. But yeah, I feel really good about it at this point, sure.
Councilmember Kennedy had something, and then Councilmember Kurtzwell, and then Councilmember Walton. So, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So, Bob, just out of curiosity, where are we with the vendors right now? How many vendors do we have lined up for the market?
Right now, I believe we're at 6 vendors for the market.
Okay, so that's
2
where,
additional that they've been referred to Tim.
I thought that's where you were like 3 weeks ago in the last
Yep,
ADA
a lot of
meeting.
people would like to, but just at the end
Okay.
of the day.
Okay.
Other people that were all the wannabes, when it comes down to, are you there? Are you going to be there? And they pulled out. We've had probably 7 people pull out that said they were going to be there.
The other question I had is this, I don't know what your plans are, is this lined up to be filmed by the Cable Commission? Is that, those arrangements already made if you're going to do that, or?
I have to say that I have not, as a rule. I've never gone out. It's not ever been on my radar. I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm very busy, and I haven't had time to
I'm
just
just asking-
automatically.
I'm just asking if
I
if
have
that's
not.
part of your plan to
No,
videotape it or
I
anything.
think it's an excellent idea. I'll give them a call. But I haven't had time. But I think it's a great idea.
Okay. 'Cause, I mean, there's a lot of people who may have other plans, for that night. I think it would be a great event to film, especially if you're going to have the increased, floats in the parade and all the rest of that, so.
I agree.
I mean, in the past, it's been like about a 3-minute parade, so it wasn't much to see.
Well, I think it's only about a 3.5-minute parade this
Okay.
time, but
But we got a tree to light up too, so that.
but we got an extra half minute.
Yep. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
No, I appreciate the idea of getting a hold of the Cable Commission.
Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, what I wanted to say is I wanted to thank you for being as detailed as you have been with the budget, with the expenses and the revenue. I want to thank you for that. And I also want to thank you for being as detailed with the actual work plan itself. This is very easy to read, very easy to understand. I just kind of wanted to ask just a couple of quick questions. I assume that the fire pits, Jeff, you're building those, making those?
Yes.
Okay, so next year that won't be a cost.
No.
So,
City will own those.
okay, oh, really? Okay. So some of these costs will go down a little bit.
Correct.
So I think that's important to let people know. What I also wanted to say is that I traditionally have gone to Rochester Hills for their big to-do that they have in the streets, and they have their fire pits, and they have their vendors that are there. And I will tell you, it's packed. People are looking for opportunities. You cannot get in a restaurant. You really cannot, because it is just that packed. This is a well-attended event. These events are at this time of year. People love them. I looked at some of the events on the back, and I'm telling you, you have some real, you're batting 1,000 here. Slara has their candy cane hunt. That goes over so well. Now, I take it this is new, the downtown Christmas stocking hunt?
That was started last year. They're going to try to build off that.
Build off of it, okay. And so I think you've got just some great events that are going on for the family at this time of year. And I think the big thing is that I think we have to put in perspective that the city is in transition, and we have new people coming in with different ideas, different ways of doing things that are sort of breaking the old mold. And I think that's a good thing, because I think we're becoming more inclusive as a community, allowing more individuals to participate in these events. And so I want to commend the both of you for being as inclusive as you have been. But what I also find very interesting about this is that this probably would not be going off to this extent if it hadn't been for the Carl and Joanne Foundation. And this is something that other cities do very well that we do not, and that is partnering with foundations and other individuals that provide that are part of a funding source for events. I think we all know the story of La Fontaine in Milford and how lucky they are, and how lucky Lyon Township is to have the people there. So now we are finally getting somebody that's caring about South Lyon and partnering with us, and I want to thank the Carl and Joanne Foundation for what you are doing, because this is clearly an event that I don't think any of us anticipated could have happened in January, February. So thank you so much. But I do want to talk to you after the meeting if I can. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Walton, you had something?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say, I think this event is wonderful. I've attended it in the past, and yes, well, it's a lighted parade. This is an event. And these are the events that keep our neighboring cities coming into our town. It brings them into our restaurants, our stores, and the more people that are open that night, the more people that we have vendors, the bigger we make this, the better it is. And this is a wonderful start. So congratulations. I am really looking forward to this year. I don't even have kids anymore at home. I have adults, and I'm going to be attending this by myself. Whatever. Great. So it's going to be a good time.
I just have a quick,
Councilmember Digg.
very quickly. Do we have I assume the newspaper knows about this and is putting,
Yes.
and they're going to write an article on it or do some kind of
I was
promotion?
just talking, I had a newspaper interview today
Great.
at my favorite corner cafe. No. I had 2 newspaper interviews on this. And then
Awesome.
it was on Channel 19 as part of the DDA interview.
Yep, I saw
last
that.
week.
That was an excellent interview, by the way, and a lot of people are complimenting you on that on Facebook, so.
The Detroit Free Press is going to be out on December 6th. Our other newspapers, and we think we'll have radio.
Awesome.
It's a tough time of year to get TV out, but on December 6th, we're going to have, the information out again, even though
Great.
it's right down to the wire, but we still are going to be able to get that out.
And the last thing I just wanted to say really quickly is the fire pit adoption. I don't know if you ever did anything like that before, but it's a really great idea, and it reminds me of the Detroit Marathon, how they have somebody sponsor each mile, and maybe even in the future you could have some kind of a competition with that. I could see organizations really being excited about, making their fire pit the best one or something like that. But I just thought it was a tremendous idea.
Yeah.
That's all. Thanks.
It's a good idea. Great.
Councilmember Welton.
Thank you. I'd like to make the motion to approve the DDA's request of November 14th for city funds for public aspects of the 2019 Cool Yule event, as shown on the 2019 Cool Yule budget, work plan, and schedule of activities.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Walton, supported by Councilmember Kurtzwell, to approve the DDA's request of November 14 for city funds for public aspects of the 2019 Cool Yule event, as shown on the 2019 Cool Yule budget, work plan, and schedule of activities. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Thanks a lot for your guys' hard
It'll
work.
be an event you'll be proud of.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you. Hey, Bob, you got the cable commission right there.
Yeah, that's.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cable Commission.
New business number 4, city legal service agreement.
City currently has a retainer agreement for our city attorney, which expires in June 30, 2021. We've had concerns and discussions for several months regarding the billing method, charging the city $10,400 per month for the first 80 hours of work. That works out to be $130 an hour, excluding labor and tax tribunal matters. After several discussions, RSJA has proposed an hourly rate of $150 an hour. The terms of the agreement shall apply retroactively to September 1st, 2019. We'll make adjustments to the September and October invoices. We have materials attached which outlines the agreement and information pertaining to prior month's billings. Obviously, the city attorney is here to answer any questions that you may have regarding the discussions we have in putting this all together.
Councilmember Kivel?
Well, I'm grateful for getting some relief from the last 2 months. It's funny that this month is the closest we've come to hitting our retainer number. Just so, I don't know if any of you guys have done the math on this, but over the last 6 months, we haven't received $17,173 worth of services. I'm just dumbstruck by the notion that that would take place when there was work on the table. That just seems bizarre to me. As I said, I'm grateful that we're going to get 2 months that will actually pay actuals. And, moving forward, hopefully we'll end up getting the services that I've been very happy with Lisa's work. I mean, she's doing a terrific job with the work that we're getting. It's just the notion that I wish this could have taken place earlier, where we weren't in the hole as deeply as we are. So, well, if nobody else has anything, I'd like to make the motion that we approve the city legal services agreement with our SJY, or JA, excuse me.
We have a motion by Councilmember Kivel, supported by Councilmember Walton, to approve the City Legal Services Amendment with RSJA. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. With that, we'll move on to the budget this evening. Councilmember Kurtzwell.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I would like to make up for some time that I lost at the last meeting, if that is okay with the mayor.
Yep.
Okay, just want to make sure it's okay with you. I'm going to bring up it in quick order, some of my issues regarding budget. First of all, I don't know if anybody is interested, but I thought it might be beneficial for us to get Andy Meisner, who is our county treasurer, to come and give a presentation to us regarding certain issues that we face regarding our unfunded liabilities, both pension and on healthcare. Additionally, if you go to the audit that was done on page 5, it was noted that we have a considerable amount of funds in cash accounts earning a very low rate of interest. And I do believe Andy Meisner can provide some insight as to certain investments that the county provides for cities themselves. So I think that this is a free resource. He's an absolutely brilliant individual. He has managed county finances through recessions and through the upticks now. He does have experience with some of these unfunded issues with respect to the fact that he works with all the cities in the county. So he has a wealth of information. But, you know, I'm only one person, but I kind of wanted to toss it out. Maybe at the next meeting people can get with Paul and just have him come in. And I did speak with Andy at the parade, and he was more than willing to come in and to chat with us. I thought it would be very, very beneficial. Next, the money that we saved on the Dixboro Road project, Paul, what was that, roughly about $134,000?
No, it was $88,000, and that was for the water main that was to go under the
88?
storm sewer that is running just south of the Mile Road.
So we didn't have to spend that $88,000?
That's correct.
So I am just going to throw it out there that maybe we use that to begin paying down our unfunded portion of the health care benefits, which is about $550,000. At least we can make a lump sum payment this year and decide what to do next year. I'm just throwing that out. There was going to be a budget amendment regarding council's approval of the Peerless invoice. I have not. Has that invoice gone out? Because I haven't seen a budget amendment. So, okay. One thing I did also want to bring to council's attention, and I have for the past 4 years. In reviewing the audit for fiscal 2019 on page 33, and I'm not quite sure where to go on this, and once again, this is just a point of discussion for people. On the audit, it does discuss the net pension liability. As of December 2017, our unfunded portion was $4.6 million. As of December 2018, it was $6 million. So contrary to, maybe I'm reading the audit wrong, but there appears to be that the unfunded portion is actually increasing. And once again, I think this is where Andy Meisner could come in and explain to us why in good times is this fund actually increasing when we've converted over to the hybrid program. And I just think we probably need to get a handle on it. So I'm proposing that we maybe get a working panel, a study group, to begin tackling the issue, looking at all the things. Maybe one or two of us go up to MERS and sit down and talk with them, look at what other cities are doing, and come back with council in 8 months with at least a plan of what we're dealing with. Also, is a SIP, capital improvement plan, being drafted for infrastructure other than just the water plant? I heard sewer tonight. Are we doing anything else?
Roads as well.
Roads.
I just received information from our engineers regarding the PACER study that was done and develop a plan for that as well.
Okay. Next, restricted assets resolution on page 5 of the audit. It talks about, and I did mention this, that we supposedly have a resolution that establishes how we deal with tap-in fees, which are restricted to used to fund improvements to the water and sewer infrastructure. I've yet to see the resolution, but supposedly it exists. But anyway, the comment that was made in the audit was that we revised that resolution, and just wanted to know if you were in the process of working on a revision to that. And the reason that sort of clicked in with me is because you do have a business owner that is asking for, some relief on tap-in fees, and I would like to see exactly how much of the tap-in fee is going into that repair fund, and whether or not at this time, given the condition of issues over in the sewer and water plant, whether that's something we should be engaging in. So I would like to be able to do a little bit more of an analysis before I waive somebody's tap-in fees, so I can actually see exactly how much money we are putting into that fund. So that resolution does need to be updated. Next has to deal with Chief Vogel. I was very dismayed to hear tonight that he's losing some fire workers to full-time jobs. I think we were very, with Steve Kennedy, with Mike Kennedy, with our prior fire chief. He was just an absolutely excellent individual. He was here part-time. He left for a full-time job. We could have had the same situation with Chief Vogel. He's staying. But I think the reality is that I was surprised to hear when I was in his office speaking to him that he sometimes puts in 55 hours a week here. That is not a part-time job. That is not part-time by any stretch of the imagination. I saw him leave tonight, so he's going on some sort of emergency. This is a gentleman that has put in more than part-time hours because I think that is his work commitment. I think that is his commitment as a public servant. And I think that it is time that we look at this and say, this is a public servant that we need to hold on to and keep him, and hopefully we can work him into a full-time position. That's just my comment. I realize that it would require some issues in the budget, but if council is interested, I'd like to see what a fiscal impact would be if he brought on full-time April 1st. That puts us almost at the end of the year, but at least it gives him some hope. He's a wonderful individual, and I want to go to bat for him because you don't want to lose him. Those are my budget comments for tonight. Thank you for the time, Mr. Mayor.
Does anyone else have anything? Councilmember Kivel?
Paul, when is the report coming back from Plant Moran for the sewer SIP?
After we get them all the rest of the information regarding the water and sewer, some of the items that we discussed tonight, we're going to have a follow-up meeting regarding sewers within the next couple of weeks. We're going to be providing that data to them, okay. And then we'll be providing that report after that. So okay. We'll talk with them, and I'll report back to you on when we get a better time frame.
Good, thank you.
Anyone else with anything on the budget this evening? All right, we'll move on to the manager's report. Paul?
I know it's been a long meeting, long presentations, everything you wanted to know about our city water system, but was afraid to ask. Tonight, I want to make comments regarding we had a great Ladies' Night event in downtown. I want to thank everybody that have participated in that. We had more people than we ever had before. A lot of work went into that, a lot of volunteer time. The 2020-21 budget, still trying to make sure you get me your comments within the next few weeks. Upcoming council agenda, we have Catherine Rivera from Southline's Center for Active Adults is going to be coming to the first meeting in December, and in January, Amy Allen from Slayer is going to be here giving her presentation. I'm going to try bring presentations every single month before council to get a better idea on all the activities and things that we have going on in the city, as well as most of the committees. The city website I brought up, we did meet with Revise, myself, city clerk Carol participated as well. We went over some of the potential new designs and how we're looking at revolving our website, combining it also with our Facebook accounts, and better way to reach the residents within the community. Also, we hope to have everything worked out regarding that vacant mechanics position. I'm also working with I've worked with the city clerk in conversations I have with her, as well as the city attorney. I mentioned to the mayor regarding council rules, procedures, items that we need to discuss moving forward. I think it's very important that we talk about how council contacts or has relationships with city employees, with our consultants, and there's so many other procedures, and to make sure we have efficient operation of the city operation. So I'll be bringing some of those things before you at an upcoming meeting. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Councilmember Kurtzwell?
I'm glad you brought that up, because some of my, and I don't know how you want me to proceed on like a couple of these budget issues, like an amendment, stuff like that. I don't know. I don't want to just walk into somebody's office and plop down for an hour.
Well, I think if you're,
so I'd rather. I mean, do I go through you, or I mean, how do you want that handled? Because I want to make sure I'm following the chain.
Well, council discussions everything should go through me before going through employees.
Okay.
I think if it's something that you're talking about, you want information on, yes, contact me, put you in touch with an individual. But if it's something regarding setting direction about how we're moving forward as a city, I think some of these things may require more than just your request. It may require a request of all of city council if we start to allocate assets, start to allocate time in preparation of information, getting people in here, that would have to come as a direction from council. And that's why when we start to have conversations with consultants, those things, if council decides that we want to have a representative contact a consultant regarding something and get clarity and then report back to council, that should happen at this meeting. If it's just a request, it should come through me, and then we make the contact with the consultants.
Because if I may, because with Andy Meisner, I didn't ask him to come to the city council. I just want to let you know. I mean, I spoke with him at the Pumpkin Fest parade just to gather information and bring it to council. But, of course, I'm just one person, but.
Right, and I think that request, if you're looking at having Andy come, I think the request should come from all of council. Do you, in fact, want Andy to come or someone else to come? Then we make those arrangements.
Okay. So I put that on an agenda to request?
Make the request. I think that would be probably a good idea, Mr. Mayor. I mean, items would go through the mayor as far as requests to put things on the agenda.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Anyone else have anything for Paul this evening? All right. At this time, we will open the floor for public comment. Please remember to state your name and address.
My name is Judy Keeling, and I live at 62180 Arlington Circle, Colonial Acres. And I just want to say it's Thanksgiving, and I want to thank all of you for being here. You guys have really taken care of us, and I feel very secure. Thank you.
Oh, that was so kind. Nice. That was so nice.
That was very sweet.
My God.
All right. At this time, we will close public comment for this evening. We will move on to council comments. And Councilmember Richards, why don't you go ahead and start us off tonight?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'll be as brief as I can here. I'll just mention a few important things. I'd like to extend our best wishes for recovery to the members of our staff family in all the departments who presently are off on medical or are recovering from illness that occurred or peaked during our last stretch of really bad, brutal weather at this time before the Thanksgiving holiday. We wish them all a speedy recovery and a safe journey. We've got people that are off in all the different departments and throughout our network. Okay, I want to bring up something I did last week here. Last week, Wednesday, in the afternoon, I went out to Dixboro Road project on the south end of Volunteer Park on the north side of 8 Mile Road. I had been out there numerous times during the preliminary stages over the last few months. This is the serious part of Phase 1, and I was stunned and flabbergasted at what I saw and experienced. I went with Doug Varney, our superintendent. I would not try going it alone. Even with my limitations, I wanted to see this operation firsthand, and of course, stay out of their way. I just want to elaborate on some details. The width of the site was extremely impressive. It's like 60 feet, 70 feet wide. The peat being removed is at a depth, and that's a lot of volume out there, 17 feet. Now that's deep in the world of the peat excavation. As far as they can reach with their shovel. The ground prep for basing the trucks to keep rolling when filled with peat, because the trucks can't stop. They have to spread fill on the fill sand, okay, gravel to keep the trucks supported. You can feel the slow vibration of the ground when the trucks and the machinery move about. That ground really floats out there. I wanted to say Article 2 here, Part D. I talked to the site foreman after we did our introductions. Doug handled that. Tom Lintz was his name, and he's part of Dan's Excavating. There's a phone number available. We shared information with him about the historical aspects of the property, early settlers and Indians who have populated that area in a wider scope of things. 700 years back and earlier. We're talking about the Clovis people. Okay, yes. Okay, asked about the grade of the peat. This peat that they're taking out of this location out there is high grade. I asked about the estimate of the yards to be taken out. He said he couldn't say for sure, but it's probably be over 1,000 for sure. 1,000 yards. Asked about the role of Oakland County in this whole process. And he said this is just phase one, as he explained. They write the checks, and they wrote the contract, and they set it up. Dan's Excavating goes through them. I asked about HRC and their involvement to this date out there. They made the engineering plans on the matter, and they come out once in a while. But that's a dangerous place out there. Asked about the percentage of time and place on the length of this enormous project. He indicated that they were just under 20% after a month here, completing it. We could do much better if they didn't have 9 inches of snow to shut things down. And I just want to say, everybody would love to see that, but it's dangerous. I would never go out there alone. I've been on a lot of construction sites over the years, and that one looks like it's fairly safe, but believe me, it's not. That ground actually moves. You can feel it just vibrating and shuffling when the big trucks go through and they can't stop. Anyway, that's, in closing, I just want to say I don't know if I had it here. I went to the ZBA meeting this past week. It was very interesting. And when the results of that meeting are posted, I think all of you will like to see it. But we're still short 2 people on this whole ZBA board. We need to get some more. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Richards. Councilmember Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following our recent election, I received a letter from a resident asking about absentee ballots and the procedure for processing them. Specifically, the letter reads as follows. Councilmember Steve Kennedy, in the next meeting, could you please speak about how absentee ballots are counted in South Lyon? We have noticed that on the Oakland County elections results page, it shows 0 absentee votes for both mayor and city council. All other cities in Oakland County list the number of absentee votes cast for each member. Were all votes absentee and election counted in the election, and are the results final? Thank you and congratulations on your win. So, to ensure the overall process is properly explained, I'm going to ask our city clerk, Ms. Lisa Deaton, to discuss it. So Lisa, if you'll just, for the benefit of this resident and all the others, explain how that took place.
Sure. Some communities have an absentee ballot counting board. What that is, it's a group of inspectors, 1 tabulator, and all the absentee ballots are sequestered in a room for the entire day. If they have to leave the room to use the restroom, they're escorted, and they're in there all day. And what that means is when the votes are tabulated through that machine, when they shut down the polls at night, those results are then modemed over to Oakland County. So they are counted as separate absentee voter ballots. We do not have an absentee voter board. For one reason, we don't have extra machines. For another reason, we've never had enough election inspectors to actually run the precincts and have a separate board just running absentee ballots. So all of our absentee ballots are received at City Hall, and then me or Judy, the deputy city clerk, will take them to each precinct, and then they're sliced open by 2 election inspectors. The tab is ripped off, and then they're fed through the tabulators with the regular ballots. So we have a total number of votes instead of it being separated. Hopefully in the future, we'll have enough people, inspectors, and we can budget for another machine, and we can have an absentee counter board, but as of right now, we don't. So that's why they're listed separately on there. Just for information, we did mail out 917 absentee ballots, and we did receive back 793 ballots by Election Day at 8 o'clock, which is not bad.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
The only other thing I want to add in the council comments is to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and hope you have an enjoyable holiday with your family and friends. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Kennedy. Councilmember Walton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of things tonight. First, I want to thank Susan Kamansky for her time on the Cultural Arts Commission. We do appreciate your volunteerism. I want to congratulate Ryan Lair on his appointment onto the Cultural Arts Commission. I think he'll be a good asset there. And we want to welcome back Amber King to our Cable Commission. She has always been an asset, and we look forward to working with you further. If you haven't heard, Cindy Hines and Agreement Enterprises were able to get the original Hudson's sleigh on display down at Ace Hardware at the far end of town in Brookdale Square. It's a really neat sight and a nice piece of Detroit history. So get over there and take a look, have some pictures, maybe shop the store a little bit while you're there, and thank Cindy for her ability to bring that into our town. So with that, I also want to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody, and Judy, thank you. And also, if you're going out on Friday, please be safe. It's just not something I've ever gotten into, but I know there's many people that really enjoy it, and just have a good time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Walton. Councilmember Dild?
A couple quick things. I just wanted to mention that I was able to go to the Phil Hart dinner this last week, and there's a lot of political bigwigs there. I did speak with Andy Meisner, Alyssa Slotkin, and Dave Coulter, and Haley Stevens. And also Haley, I just want to let everybody know, Haley Stevens actually called out South Lyon during her speech. They are all very excited about the things that are going on in South Lyon, the revitalization of our downtown, our activities that are going on, the growth. Everybody was very excited. It just seemed like everybody was almost coming up to me to talk to me about South Lyon. So it was very exciting, great thing to see. I also wanted to say, I wanted to thank Ms. Nikoloff, who came here last meeting in the middle of the snowstorm to talk about the crosswalks. And as the city manager knows, that it's one of my big issues also. But I wanted to let her know that when you do speak at council, people listen, and we have been following up on that. And I know that the city manager and the chief are looking into some of the safety issues around those crosswalks. And then I just want to say a quick thank you to the businesses and the DDA for Ladies' Night. The businesses just go all out on that, and what we were saying about the business owners being there, it's really exciting for people, I think, when the business owners are there, and they just really made it a lot of fun. Finally, for the Cool Yule, I'm going to be volunteering with Tim for the marketplace, so I'll be out there all day long lugging around wood and helping with the marketplace. So anybody else wants to volunteer, please sign up. I'm going to keep promoting that. I know they need a lot of volunteers. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dill. Councilmember Kurtzwell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I would like to thank the Knights of Columbus at St. Joseph's Church for awarding my husband and I a certificate of award for our service to family and the community. This is an incredible honor, and we accept it with humility and with gratitude. The Knights of Columbus are a 501c3 organization dedicated to charity and service to those in need, and some of their charities include disaster relief, aid to orphans, coats for kids, scholarships, and food for families, just to name a few. In 2017, the Knights of Columbus raised $185 million in donations with 75.6 million hours of service. And the South Lyon area is a community that is a recipient of some of their charitable work. Again, my husband and I are extremely honored. This is very, very prestigious to receive. And much of what we do not talk about because that's not how it's done. But this was an award given. So I want to thank the Knights of Columbus for what they did. Additionally, this is a time, Thanksgiving and Christmas, as we come up to Christmas and Hanukkah, where, people have lost their loved ones, and I would hope that everybody remembers those that have lost someone, to send them a card, give them a phone call, stop by, do something. I think my mother always used to say that no act of kindness ever goes unpaid. So it will come back. So please be kind to those that have lost someone. Last, I wish everyone in the city, including my colleagues up here, Glenn and Steve and Dan, Carl and Rose, a wonderful Thanksgiving. And at this time, what we are also thankful for is to have Lisa joining us on this journey to enriching and enhancing our community life in South Lyon. So we are thankful for you, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kurtzwell, and congratulations to you and Ken on that very nice award. Very cool. Councilmember Kibble.
Keep it simple. Volunteer. Get on the website for Carl and Joanne Foundation and sign up. Be a participant. It's really rewarding. Sometimes it's inconvenient, but once you're there, it's a good time. I mean, it's always a good time. And outside of that, just happy Thanksgiving to everybody. That's all I have.
Thanks, Councilmember Kibble. I'll keep this brief too. Just a quick update on, I talked about shaking up the seating arrangements up here a couple weeks ago, and we're still looking to do that, but I'm gathering some information. I'm speaking to former Mayor Galius and people. So hopefully we'll have an update on that next meeting. I'm also going to work with City Attorney Lisa on that too, so thank you. And then with that being said, I just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. I hope everyone has a safe and happy holiday, and we'll see you back here in a couple weeks. With that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Have a great night, all.